Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya That's page 104. Nectarian glories of Rajadham. Jaya Radhe Jaya Krishna Jaya Vrindavana Shri Govinda Govinatha Madana Mohana Jaya Radhe Jaya Krishna Jaya Vrindavana Shri Govinda Shama Jaya जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय आचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमान अभय चरणारविंदम भक्तिवेदांत गोस्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय क्रीड़ा प्रविष्ट विष्णुपाल परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमान भक्त सिद्धांत सरस्वती महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की आनंद कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की प्रेम सहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्री वासादि गौड़ भक्त वृंद की श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गौ गोविंद श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की वृंदावन धाम की मणिपुर धाम की मधुरपुरी धाम की जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की द्वारकापुरी धाम की गंगा माई की यमुना माई की तुलसी देवी की भक्ति देवी की सामवेद भक्त वृंद की गौर प्रेमानंदी all glories to assemble devotees, all glories to assemble devotees, all glories to assemble devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिधि नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे नमस्ते शून्यवाणी पाश्चात्य देशकारिणे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय
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 ओम अज्ञानस्मिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदामह्यं ददाति स्वपदामह्यं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं सात्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्री राधा कृष्णपदां सहगणललितां श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिधि नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशकारिणे नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत सरस्वती नामिने श्रीवर्षभानुमती देवी दयाय प्रभावये कृष्ण संबंध विज्ञानं दायिने प्रभवे नमः माधुर्योज्ज्वल प्रेमानंद श्री रूपानुभक्तिदा श्री गौर करुणा शक्ति विग्रहाय नमोस्तुते नमस्ते गौरवाणी श्री मूर्तये दीनदारिणे रूपानुगरुद्धाव सिद्धान्तध्वंगहारिणे नमो गौरकिशोराय साक्षात् वैराग्यमूर्तये विप्रलम्बरसाम्भोधे पदाम्बुजाय नमः नमो भक्तिरमोदाय सच्चिदानन्दनामिने गौरशक्तिस्वरूपाय रूपानुगराय ते गव्याविर्भवभूमेस्त्वं निर्दिष्टा सज्जनप्रिय वैष्णवा सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथाय ते नमः वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्यनाम्ने गौरकुशे नमः अनन्तपद्मं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशास्त्रियं हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपीश गोपिकान्त नमोस्तुते जयराम सुरसौभाङ्गो मोहन्दमतेऽर्कति मत्सर्वस्वदां भोजो राधामोहनो दिव्यमन्दारण्यकल्पद्रुमोदो श्रीमद्रत्नाकरसिंहासनस्थो श्रीमद्राधा श्रीरघोविन्ददेवो प्रशालिभिसेव्यमानो स्मरामि श्रीमन्द्रासरसारम्भी वंशीवटतटस्थिता कर्षान्वयस्वनेर्गोविनाथाश्रयस्तु नः तप्तकाञ्चनगौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरि वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये जय श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृन्द हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. So, last Saturday we were talking about this 12th chapter, the very end of 12th chapter, where Krishna spoke about a devotee, what Krishna expects from the qualities in a devotee, isn't it? That's what we were talking about. Beginning from that verse, Advesha Sarvabhutanam, which is verse number 13 onwards, 13 to 20th, 13 to 20. Verse 13 to verse 20 is the cream of that chapter, where Krishna is saying, this is what I consider a devotee will be like. Advesha Sarvabhutanam Maitra Karuna Evacha Nirmamo Nirahangara Samadukham Sukhakshami Sandushta Sadadam Yogi Yad Alma Drada Nishchayaha Maya Arpita Mano Buddhar Yomal Bhakta Same Priyaha Yasman no Dujade Logo Loga no Dujade Chaya Arsham Amarsham Bhayam Udvegam Muktovaya Sajame Priyaha Anabeksha Sujirdaksha Udasino Gadavyada Sarvaramba Parityami Yomal Bhakta Same Priyaha Yona Hrishadi na Dveshti, na Shavachadi, na Kamshadi, Shubha Shubha Varityagi, Bhaktimanya Same Priyaha. Then Krishna is saying, Samau Shatrauja Mitraja Tadha Manavamaneyo, Shitoshna Sukhadukkeshu, Sama Sangha Vivarjidaha, Tulya Ninda Studiramavini, Sandushto Yena Kena Chita, Anikeda Sthira Matir, Bhaktiman Me Priyonara. That is where we were discussing that verse, isn't it? So we have seen there that while talking about that previous verse itself, he mentioned there, that is the 18th verse, that Krishna says, how does Samashatrauja Mitreja, that how does that happen to a person? Shatru Mitram, friend, enemy. Similarly, Tatha Manam Avamanam, praise and insult. Somebody praises you and somebody insults you. Tatha Manam, Shidam Ushnam, heat and cold. Sukham Dukham, happiness and distress. Shidoshna Sugudukhesu Samaha, equal. In all these things, equal. Sangha Vivarjidaha. And freedom from the Sangam. That is what is making, that means freedom of Sangam from what? Sangam from the three modes of material nature. Is freed from that. Due to that, all these dualities, Dvandvam, these are called dualities or Dvandvam in life. Shidam Mushnam, happiness, distress, praise and insult, friend and enemy. These are all dualities in life, isn't it? Actually they have no meaning. Practically they have no meaning. But we have, due to our ragadvesham inside, these things happen. Because of ragam, because of dvesham inside, attachment and aversion inside, that is how all these things have come up. This dundvam or duality has come up because of ragadvesham inside. Because I have ragam, attachment to sukham, I feel sukham. I have aversion to dukham, I feel dukham. Similarly, a friend and enemy has come because I have attachment to somebody, he has become a friend. Aversion to someone, he has become an enemy. So this way, the ragadvesham inside develops this duality. Dundvam comes from raga. That is why Krishna is, you will see throughout Bhagavad Gita, one important point Krishna mentions about this ragadvesham. Ragam dvesha vimuktestu vishayan indriyaischaren. Krishna is saying, as long as we have ragadvesham inside and senses are engaged in the sense objects, Vishyan Indriya is charan, then ragadvesham muktestu Vishyan Indriya Atma Vishyer Vithaya Alma Prasadam Abhigachari. Krishna is saying that once you are released from that, you are situated on the platform of the soul and you will be in the perfect peace, perfect state of happiness. Prasadam Adhigachari, Krishna is saying. So, while discussing that, we have mentioned that you can see that by practical experience in life, how Krishna is teaching us that. When we go into the deep sleep state, there is no body, there is no mind, there is no attachment, there is no aversion, and there is happiness. Is it not? As long as you go into the deep sleep state, there is no mind, there is no body, and there is no attachment, there is ragadvesham has gone in the deep sleep. And there is perfect happiness. There is no difference at all. So, and what else is happening there? This personality, ahangaram, false ego, that's also not there. Ragadvesham and this ahangaram inside. Ahangaram has got this ragadvesham. Soul doesn't have ragadvesham. The false ego has got a ragadvesham. The soul doesn't have any ragam, any dvesham anywhere. Soul is pure, completely, always, nitya shuddha mukta swarupa. But because ahangaram also dissolves, mind dissolves, ahangaram dissolves, there is no ragam, no dvesham in the deep sleep state. And Krishna is showing us by practical proof that when ahangaram goes away, ragadvesham goes away, and there is no dvandvam either, no duality there in the deep sleep state. There is no friend or enemy in the deep sleep, is there? There is no heat or cold only in the bodily level, but if you are in the deep sleep state, heat and cold also doesn't bother. Nobody can praise you or insult you in the deep sleep state. That also doesn't exist. So all these dualities what Krishna is talking about here, Shiram, Ushnam, Sukham, Dukkham, Samha, everything is equal in that deep sleep state. Krishna is saying here that. So when we, and personality also goes away in that deep sleep state. Our personality means this false ego, isn't it? That's our personality. What we call as personality is that false ego. That goes away. And when we wake up, what happens? We feel that we shouldn't have woken up, isn't it? From that deep sleep state. Because as soon as you wake up, the mind comes out and then the false ego comes out. And then you feel sometimes that you may like to go back to that same state what you are experiencing at that time. So all problems of this world is solved in that state, in the deep sleep state. all distress is also goes away. Even if you have the highest distress during the day, when you go into the deep sleep state, that distress is also gone. Similarly, the greatest happiness also, that will leave you at that time. So all we have to know is this, that whatever you have seen that in the deep sleep state, none of them were reality, wasn't it? All this so-called reality in the awakened state was not a reality in the deep sleep state. If we realize it, that because it's not a reality in the deep sleep state, it's not a reality in the awakened state either. If you realize that, that's all what is required. Only difference is, in Sushupti state what's happening is, you are dissolving everything. In the awakened state, through knowledge, it happens. That's the only difference. In the deep sleep state, it happens because everything gets dissolved in a natural way. It gets dissolved, everything. Krishna is set it up like that. But in the awakened state, if the same knowledge comes in us, through knowledge, if the same state happens to us, then you will notice that they are not real, because these things are not real. That is why Krishna is showing to us that in the deep sleep state is a perfect example, that when you have lost all the body, mind, intelligence, ego, everything, duality did not disturb you. Three modes of material nature does not disturb you. Ragadvesham does not cause you any problem there. No problems of this world, you can take it to your deep sleep state. And when you come back, all what you have to understand is that in deep sleep state, we left everything in a natural way. If through knowledge, if that same way we can leave all these things in the awakened state, then we have escaped from here. Then we have escaped from it. That is self-realization. That is self-realization. Just like we have left everything in a natural way in the deep sleep and gone to freed ourselves from the duality, from the modes of nature, from the ragam, dvesham, attachment, aversion, everything. Similarly, through knowledge, if we can leave it in the vacant state, we have escaped from here. That's what Krishna is saying here. So, because how do we realize that? Through knowledge, you can see there the body, the mind, the intelligence, the ego, none of them, and many other things, designations, positions, or recognitions, or our positions in this world, we realize that in the deep sleep state, none of them is a truth, isn't it? And because we understood that, that comes and goes. It's not a truth at all. And if you come to know that, in Sushupti state also, after leaving all these things, how the happiness came in the Sushupti state, and that happiness will come in a that same happiness what you have experienced in the deep sleep state, by leaving all these things, what happiness you got it in the deep sleep state. Through knowledge, if you give up all this duality from this world, what will happen is in the vacant state also, the same happiness will come up inside. The same happiness what we have experienced in the deep sleep state will come up inside automatically, without any effort. While we are fully awake, in full consciousness, that realization will come up. So, in that case, Krishna, that is what Krishna is saying there, Sandushta Sadatam Yogi. He says there, isn't it? Sandushta Sadatam Yogi Yatalma Drada Nishchaya Mayarpila Manobhagdir Yomal Bhakta Samay Priyaha. If you look into the verse, that earlier, the talking about, Krishna says there, that was in a previous, the 14th verse. He says there in the 14th verse, Sandushta Sadatam Yogi. Where does that Sandushti comes from? Sandushti comes from this realization it comes. Not by acquiring things in this world. You're never going to become happy with that. Only by this realization that Santushti will come. Santushti means that happiness will come like that. So, in other words, false ego has gone completely from inside, then happiness will come. Once the false ego from inside completely disappears, happiness will naturally come there, because then you are not on the platform of the body anymore, you are on the platform of the soul at that time. That is what the next verse is saying. Tulya ninda studir mauni santushto yena kena chita anigeda sthiramadir bhaktiman me priyo naraha. Ninda studi. Tulya ninda studir mauni santushto yena kena chita. Ninda studi. Ninda means insult. Studi means praise. Tulya ninda studir mauni. Tulya, equally. When you get insulted or when you get praised, you are not, no movement inside the mind. That's the important thing. Not that I keep my false ego inside and tolerate it. Not that. That's not how it is. Because the false ego has gone from inside. When somebody glorifies you, actually it's a false ego that is enjoying. When somebody glorifies you or somebody insults you, who gets disturbed? Not the soul. It's the false ego that gets disturbed. False ego gets disturbed. So once that false ego is gone, naturally Krishna says, Tulya ninda stuti. Ninda and stuti, whether you are praised or insulted, you will be equal in both cases. So, and Santushto, Tulya ninda stuti, what else happens to him? Mauni. Such a person will be Mauni, silent. Because he is not affected by anything. So he is silent. Sandushtaha. Tulya ninda stuti Mauni Sandushta. He is always satisfied, peaceful inside, because his happiness is not coming from the world outside, it's coming from the soul. It's coming from the soul. Sandushto yena kenachita. Because you can see this way also, kenachit means that he is satisfied with whatever comes in life. That satisfaction inside, contentment inside, satisfaction inside. Then, and there, Tulya ninda studir mauni santushto yena kenachita. Tulya ninda studi, ninda ja studi cha ninda studi. Te tulyaha, yasya sa tulya ninda studi. Mauni, mauna one who is silent and peaceful within himself. Samyadavat sandushto yenagil sharirasthiti matrena. So he is satisfied. Sandushto yenagil. Whatever he receives in this world for maintaining this body, for maintaining his body, he is satisfied with that. Sharirasthiti matrena. Only for the sake of the means body. And he is satisfied, totally satisfied with that. Tatha uktam yena kenachida channo yena kenachida ashida yatra kvachana shayisya tam deva brahmanam vidu. Mahabharatam, from the Mahabharatam is this quotation. It says, yena kenachida channo yena kenachida ashidaha. Talking about a Brahmana. In Mahabharatam it says like that. Who is a Brahmana? Mahabharata says like this. That suppose whatever cloth he gets, he wears that. He is satisfied with that to cover his body. Whatever cloth comes on his way, he takes it and uses it. And ashida. That means if he is hungry, whatever comes on his way, he takes that food. He eats that. Yatra kvachana shayisya tam deva brahmanam vidu. And if he finds he is tired, he wants to sleep, wherever he finds a place to sleep, he will lie down and sleep there. This is Brahmana. Like our Sudama's case. Isn't it? These are the qualification of a Brahmana. In the modern world, it's completely all different understanding of Brahmana means, isn't it? We think something else of a Brahmana. But without all these things, there is no spiritual realization going to happen. It will run like a show in the world, but it won't benefit anybody. Yena kenachida achanno, yena kenachida ashida, yatra kvachana shayisya tam deva brahmanam vidu. These are the qualities of a devotee. Of a Brahmana, in other words. Kimcha anikedo nikeda ashrayo nivaso niyato na vidyade yasya sa aniketaha anagara ityadi smriti andara stiramadi stira paramartha vastu vishayamadi yasya sta stiramadi bhakti manme priyonara. Anikeda means one who does not stay any place permanently. One who does not stay anywhere permanently. That is what he is saying. Anikeda. Anikeda stiramadi. Stiramadi means one who is only concerned about the truth. Nothing else. Only about self-realization and the truth. He is fixed there. That is called stiramadi. Such a devotee is very dear to me, Krishna is saying. Anikeda stiramadi bhakti manme priyomera. A person who is with all these nature is very dear to me, Krishna is saying. You will see in the Srimad Bhagavatam, if you look from the beginning, that Shiva Brahmarshi was like that. Isn't it? Sukadeva Goswami was like that. Very nature that Jada Unmata Bishajavadi says. He was to walk around everywhere and matted hair, like people saw him and thought that he is a ghost in the sense, isn't it? With a grown hair and matted hair, and not concerned about the body very much. Whatever comes, he will take it. That's his nature. Jada Unmata Pishajavad. Mudha Andha Badiraha. So many things it says in the Bhagavatam about Sukabrahmarshi, Sukadeva Goswami. That is a devotee. Such devotees are dear to Krishna. That's what Krishna is saying here. That why all these mentions? Because Krishna is saying to us that these are the people whom I value. Not who shows around in this world, I am this, I am that. There is no value for that. Krishna is saying, this is what I consider as a devotee's nature. He says here, Adveshta, he says, Adveshta Sarvabhudanam, from that verse onwards, Ityadinam, Aksharasya Upasaganam, Nivritta Sarveshananam, Sanyasinam, Paramatha Jnanamishtanam, Dharmajadam, Prakandam Osamvihane. So, no dvesham or ill feeling towards other living entities, and the freedom from all the desires, and completely fixed in the platform of knowledge. Completely platform of knowledge. So, saying all these things, Krishna mentions in that verse. So, with this verse, that is this verse 19, all those qualities Krishna has completed there. So, why, if you see there, Tulininda Sudhir Mauni, the 19th verse, Tulininda Sudhir Mauni, Sandushto Yena Kenache, Anigeda Sthiramadir Bhakti Manme Priyonaya. Krishna says here, normally people are happy in this world when they get something, isn't it? But here, the example Krishna says that he is sitting, he is satisfied and still happy without having anything in this world, without any reason behind it. And externally, he is totally opposite. Externally, he is totally opposite. You will see these personalities in the Bhagavatam everywhere. Shuka Brahmashi is one example. Then you will also know that when Krishna took the spoke to Uddhava about this. Krishna says to Uddhava, Uddhava, long ago there was King Yadu. King Yadu met this Avaduta Brahmana. In the Akasha Skandam you know that, in the 11th canto. There he says here that how is he there? Yadu asked this question to that Brahmana, Avaduta Brahmana. How come you are so happy? He had nothing, no clothes, no food, lying in the sand in the Kaveri river bank, and he is smiling, lying there. When he saw Yadu is asking him, "You don't have anything. You don't know where the next meal is going to come from, but you don't have any anxiety about that. You don't have any clothes. You don't have a place to sleep. You are lying down in the river bank on the sand, and you are very happy still. How is this possible?" He is asking. Isn't it? If you know in Bhagavatam, if you go back to those verses, you will see there that he is asking this question. You have, that is what that word, Sandushto Yena Kenachit, means that. Sandushto Yena Kenachit. He has no, and Stiramadihi. Although everything is like that, Stiramadihi, firmly fixed in the truth. In other words, he knows that he is not the body, he is the soul. That firm, fixed nature state of consciousness all the time. Nothing to do with the body, waiting for the body to go, and then he goes. So, such a devotee, Krishna is saying, is very dear to me. This is what Krishna is expecting from the devotee to be at the end. Not acquire a lot of wealth in this world and become rich. That's not what is expected from a devotee. Devotee, what is expected is, best example, if you keep reading Bhagavatam, you will see all these personalities coming and telling us, this is how we were. That's what they are telling us. That the story of Bharat Maharaj, same thing, isn't it? Jadabharata was like that, isn't it? Jadabharata became like that at the end. Jada Unmatta Pishachavad, it says. Jadam, always, that's why I got the name Jadabharata. Doesn't want to talk to anybody, doesn't have anything to talk to. That as much as we get the clarification on the truth, when the truth gets clarified, this is what will happen. We will see that everything is false in this world, what we are dealing with. A false world, a false ego inside, and dealing with all the falsities with this world. That's what will come out from that. That's the way it is. So, Krishna is saying here, examples are like Jadabharata, Shukadeva Goswami, this Avaduta Brahmana, Dattatreya Brahmana in the Ekadasha Skandam, and many others like that in the Bhagavatam. You will see these qualities coming out. Rishabhadev, another perfect example of that. Same situation with them. If you look at, they'll use the same word, Jadam, Unmatam, Pishachavad, Badhira, Moga. Either they are deaf or dumb, they don't want to talk to this world. They don't want to talk to this world. They come out of this place altogether. So, because of that, why is it? Anikeda Sthiramadir Bhakti Manapriya. Chalachala Nikedasya Yedir Yadrichigo Bhavet. Chalachala Nikedasya Yedir Yadrichigo Bhavet. Chala means that is moving, that is this body. Achalam means the soul. Achalam is sheltered inside the chalam. Chalam is the body moving. Inside that there is something which doesn't move, achalam, that is the soul. Soul doesn't move. Body keeps on moving, but the soul inside, he has no movement at all, any time. So that is what it is, that achalatvam, the non-movement of the soul. So what happens is, when our consciousness moves away from the body and we come to fix on the platform of the soul, we also become ajalam. We also don't move anymore. Only when your identification is with the body, this movement happens inside the mind. Mind is always going one way or the other, isn't it? From the past to the future, like that. This movement of the mind is happening because of the identification with the body. Once identification of the body goes away, we move back to the platform of the soul. That ajaratvam quality or non-movement nature of the soul will come to us. And we won't be moving anymore after that. After saying this, the last verse. Yedu dharmamradamidam Yathoktam paripasate Shraddhadanamal paramam Bhaktaste divame priyaha Yedu dharmamradamidam Yathoktam paripasate Shraddhadanamal paramam Bhaktaste divame priyaha Yedu dharmamradam idam Yathoktam paryu upasate Shraddhadana mal parama Bhaktaste imame priyaha. Translation: He who follows this imperishable path of devotion service and who completely engages himself with faith, making me the supreme goal, is very, very dear to me. Krishna is saying it's very, very dear to me. So, you will see in the last sentence of the purport of the 19th verse. Krishna, where Prabhupada mentions there, of course, he does not extraneously endeavor to acquire these qualifications. But engagement in Krishna consciousness and devotional service automatically helps him to develop them. So that's a proof to say that they cannot be developed. You cannot, suppose you decide from now on I'll try to keep all these qualities mentioned in my mind all the time. That will not work. That will not work. This has to happen only through one way, by self-realization. When you engage in spiritual life through bhakti, when realization happens, self-realization happens, these qualities will naturally be there in that person. He doesn't have to extra endeavor to get it. It will be there in him. That's what Krishna is saying there. That is one thing important to remember here. So, Yedu Sanyasino Dharmamidam says that what is dharmam? Yedu dharmamridamidam. Krishna uses that word specifically there, dharmamridamidam, isn't it? Yedu sanyasino dharmamridam dharmad anabedam dharmyam cha tad amridam cha tad amridatva hedutvad idham yathoktam adveshta sarvabhudanam ityadinam parivasade anyudishtanvi shraddhadanaha sandaha mal parama yathoktaha aham aksharalma paramo nirdisheya gadi yesham te mal parama mal bhakta cha uttamam paramartha jnana lakshanam bhaktim ashritaha te adivame priyaha. Krishna is saying, so here that in this last verse, while concluding this chapter, if anybody has any doubt about dharma, people ask this question always, isn't it? What is dharma? That is answered here. Krishna says, Yedu dharmamridamidam. If somebody asks, what is dharma? This is the answer. Only you have to show these verses. This is what is dharma means. Beginning from Adveshta Sarva Bhudanam up to this Tulinindas Tudirmavini. Those 8-9 verses is dharma. Krishna calls it as dharma. That is dharma. Krishna says, one who has all these qualities in him, in anybody, he has got dharma. He knows, he has realization of the dharma. And not that outside we show so many, externally we display so many things and says, I have dharma. Krishna doesn't believe in that. Krishna says, if in a person, verse from 12 to 19, those verses, Adveshta Sarvabhudanam to Tulinindas Tudirmavini, if all those qualifications, if you see in someone, Krishna says he has got dharma. Not by showing to the world that I am a great dharmishtan or I follow dharma. That doesn't work. That's not the point. So, whoever has got these things in him, he has got dharma, Krishna says. Externally, let him look anything. Doesn't matter. It's not important. It is not important. Only if these qualities are dharma, then it is a universal thing. Anywhere it can happen to anybody. These qualifications can happen in anyone, anytime. And wherever we go in this world, you may see these qualities in someone. You may see these qualities in someone, and you can see that there is dharma in that person. And you can also notice that what religion he comes from, what caste he is coming from, what color or what varnam, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Shudra, or Brahmachari, Grasa, Vanaprastha, Sannyasam, no matter where he comes from, whatever background he comes from, if he has got these qualities, Krishna is saying here, he is a Brahmana, he is a Jnani, and he is a liberated soul. That's how Krishna concludes that. That's why Krishna is saying this here, Yedu dharmamrutamrutam yathoktam paripasade. If these qualities have come to a person, no matter where he is in this world, he is a liberated soul, he is a Jnani, and he is also a Brahmana. That is how Krishna's way of looking at a Brahmana. Brahmana is supposed to have not by other reasons, otherwise there is no meaning. That everything based on birth and everything based on initiation and all that. No, nothing based on the birth. Nothing is based on the initiation. All that illusions we have to give up. Only criteria which makes a person a Brahmana is this verses 12 to verse 19. That is what Krishna says. He is a Brahmana. Yedu dharmyamrutamidam yadhoktam paripasate. Krishna is saying there. That what he is, he has got all these qualities. Because, so in that way, whoever is taking my shelter, Krishna is saying here, Shraddha Bhaktaha. Yadoktam paripasate. Shraddha dhana malparama. Krishna is saying, he has got Shraddha. He has got it. That's what Krishna is saying. All the other things, we are concerned about all other nonsense in this world, isn't it? We think they are all important. Krishna is saying none of them is important, this is important. we falsely fall into all kinds of misunderstanding about Krishna consciousness, is it not? We think that all the other things are important. No, nothing is important. Not your initiation, not your external dress, not your appearance or all what you do in this world. None of them. These verses from 12 to 19, what Krishna says here, that person, he has got it there, he is already liberated because he is serving me. He is performing upasana with Shraddha. He has got Shraddha in me. And what will happen? What will happen to him? But because he has got Shraddha in the real substance in this, in the real thing, Malparaha, he will be completely surrendered to me. That's what Krishna says there. That means he has reached the goal, in other words. Malparaha. Malpara. Shraddhana malparamam. Bhaktaste adivame priyaha. And that person who has come to me and taken my, surrendered to me in that way, he is very, very dear to me, Krishna says. This is how Krishna concludes that. Priyo hi jnaninotyartam iti yat sujidam tad vyakhyaya iha upasamhridam bhaktade adivame priyati. So earlier in the 7th chapter, if you remember, in the 7th chapter, Priyo hi jnaninotyartam aham sacha mama priya. There also Krishna said the same thing. That means a person who comes to this state of bhakti, he will be a jnani as well. Because you can see the same way Krishna has glorified jnani there, and Krishna is glorifying the devotee also here, in the same way. The 7th chapter, if you look, you will see in the 17th verse, Priyo hi jnaninotyartam aham sacha mama priya. I am very dear to him, he is very dear to me, Krishna says about the jnani. And here also Krishna is saying that because he has these qualities in him, Shraddhadana malparama, his Shraddha, bhakti and Shraddha is practically no difference. If you have good bhakti, you will have good Shraddha as well. They go together, they can't be separated. When you have good bhakti, very strong bhakti inside, you will have very good Shraddha also. That's why Shraddha and bhakti is used sometimes in different places alternatively. These are the subtleties of Bhagavad Gita. We try to understand Bhagavad Gita in a technical way. Technical way Bhagavad Gita won't understand. You cannot understand technically like that. It's not that one word means one thing, another word means one thing. Both words means the same thing. In this particular chapter, when Krishna is referring to bhakti, he is saying there that you have to connect this with that 7th chapter. 7th chapter, Krishna mentioned in the 17th verse, Priyohi jnaninotyartam aham sacha mama priyaha. I am very dear to him and he is very dear to me. Krishna said that about the jnani. And here Krishna is saying, Shraddhadana e dharmyamrtamidam yadhoktam parivasade. If a person has got all these qualities, what Krishna has spoken there from verse 12 to 19, that 8 verses, Krishna is saying if these qualities are in a person, he has got Shraddha. That means he is worshipping me, or he is surrendering to me with full understanding, proper understanding. Shraddhadana. With Shraddha, Malparama, he is surrendered unto me. And therefore, Bhaktaste Adiva Priyaha. Adiva Priya means he is extremely dear to me, Krishna is saying. Adiva Priya. He is extremely dear to me. So, Yasmad Dharmyamridam idam yathoktam Anutishtan Bhagavado Vishnu Parameshwarasya Adivame Priyo Bhavadi Tasmad Imam Dharmyamridam Mumukshonam Yatnada Anushtayam Vishnoho Priyam Param Dhama Jikimishyanam Iti Vakyartaha. So, now there is something important. Let's look at this way. Krishna is concluding this chapter, 12th chapter of Bhakti Yoga. We have heard this from 3-4 months, this chapter, from March onwards, March, April, May, now it's also this 4 months, we were hearing this chapter, Bhakti Yoga, isn't it? What have we understood? That's the question, is it not? Because what people, we have, spiritual life is not easy always, in that sense, that our Shraddha attention is always in the world. What the world does, we tend to go along with it, is it not? Never one moment we think that spiritual life is a very serious business in this world. And that requires a lot of inward-looking nature, thinking nature. One has to analyze things and able to get some understanding from the Shastram, what does Krishna means by all these things. Otherwise what will happen is, we will just go along like the sheep go with the crowd. Go with the crowd. That's what will happen. So, these qualities are universal. Krishna is saying here. So if you want to please Krishna, in genuinely if you want to please Krishna, it means these qualities has to come in us. There is no other way. There is no alternative to that except that these qualities has to come in us. What Krishna has spoken here. If it happens, Krishna will take us away from here. He will take us away from here. He won't keep us anymore here after that. So, but if we don't have these qualities, Krishna won't come to us anywhere nearby. He will stay away from us. He won't come closer to us. But how will these qualities come? This is the paradox. This is the paradox. How to have these qualities. Because only if Krishna comes, these qualities will come. Only if you have Krishna consciousness inside, these qualities will come. But Krishna won't come till you have these qualities also. So that is another side of it. So Krishna is saying here in this verse's conclusion that only just like this, only when the light comes, darkness will go, isn't it? So there is no other way. We have to continuously cry to Krishna to make us like that. There is no easier way than that. And crying is not a wrong thing. We may think, oh, we are grown up men, how can we cry? We never cried in my life, how can I cry? It is not true. When we come to this world, what happens first thing? We don't know who father, who mother is. All we know is to cry. That's how we came here, isn't it? We just cried, every one of us. When we came to this world, have we made all arrangements before I came to this world that somebody is going to look after us here? When we came as a newborn baby, who looked after us? Only weapon we had at that time in our hand was to cry. Nothing else we knew, isn't it? So it's nothing to be ashamed of about that, to think that crying to Krishna is not a wrong thing. We should cry to Krishna. That exactly we cried in the day when we came to this world, helplessly, under nobody has told us why we are come here. We don't know what we are. We have just appeared in this world one day. But now people are saying, oh, my appearance day is such and such a day, appeared in this day, appeared in that day, as though he has done with all his full, as though he has full freedom to do that. He was brought here by the forces of material nature, so he has come here. So that is the only way these qualities will come to us, when we cry to Krishna. And it's just like it's a complementary and a supplementary thing. So, if you don't listen to anything what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita without caring for any of these things, and then you keep on glorifying Krishna, Krishna won't like that. Krishna is not very pleased about that. Without knowing what Krishna has spoken in the Bhagavad Gita and not listening to it, I won't care for Bhagavad Gita. I'll only do some kirtan here or kirtan there, and I will do other things what I have been told by the other friends or devotees or whoever has told. I'll take that on board, I'll listen to them, but I won't take serious note of Bhagavad Gita. That attitude is wrong. That's wrong. You need both. You need both. So, on one hand, we have to fully understand what Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita, and simultaneously, along with that, we have to glorify Krishna also. And so, to think that, oh, I don't have to perform any sadhana, I just have to study Bhagavad Gita, that's also wrong. Both are required. One side, we have to understand what Krishna is saying. On the other side, we have to engage in our sadhana also. And bhakti sadhana, in other words, both together has to go on. And as much as possible, by meditating on these qualities what Krishna has spoken, if it anyway it manifests in us, by Krishna's mercy, if it happens, we have to feel gratitude to Krishna for that. If it is not happening, then you have to say to Krishna that none of this is happening to me. And saying that, you have to cry. And when Krishna is going to give it to us, all these qualities, you cannot say. You cannot say. Only thing you have to say to Krishna, I don't have it at the moment. That's my situation at the moment. And so, saying to Krishna that I want to have these qualities, you have to cry. There is no other way, because these qualities, starting from Adveshta Sarva Bhutanam, right up to this Tulininda Studir Mauni, Sandushto Yena Kainachit, Aniyana Stiramada Bhaktya, these are devotee. This is Krishna calls as a devotee. So you have to say to Krishna that all these symptoms, Krishna, you have to create in me. I don't have them. Unless you give it to me, it is not going to happen. Saying that you have to surrender to Krishna. And that has to happen from our side. Otherwise it won't happen. And that is what is known as Sharanagati. Sharanagati or surrender or bhakti means that. That is what is bhakti means. So without studying Bhagavad Gita, we may think so many other things as bhakti. That will happen. So many things we have to look at it in a very serious way. When we are going through Bhagavad Gita, you will see that a lot of things what we consider as bhakti is a version that the world has created, an impression in the people's mind that is bhakti. But that's not bhakti. Bhakti is what Bhagavad Gita says. That is bhakti. What Bhagavad Gita says is bhakti. Nothing else. Bhagavad Gita is the authority on bhakti. Nothing else. So that is why we have seen the 6 chapters in the middle of Bhagavad Gita is the Bhakti Shalkam. All refers to bhakti. And in that 6 chapters, we have seen the 7th chapter, we have now seen the 11th chapter and the 12th chapter. 3 chapters we have reviewed now. We have gone through in reasonably in detail these 3 chapters out of the 6 chapters. 7th chapter, 11th chapter and the 12th chapter. And we have left now with 8th, 9th and 10th. 3 chapters in between we have to go through. These 6 chapters altogether is reference to bhakti. Is reference to bhakti. Now, when we discuss these chapters, you will see something that it is completely different than what you have probably understood from the temple or from the other devotees, I don't know, wherever we pick up different things from different sources, isn't it? You will observe one thing very important, that these 6 chapters speaks about bhakti in a different level. In a different level. Not that everything is wrong, not that way. But if this understanding of these 6 chapters is not there, then majority of the activities what you are executing in bhakti will not develop bhakti. That is the important point. Because this is the shastra behind it, the science behind what Krishna says. When Krishna says bhakti, this is what he means, not what we mean. Because in this world, bhakti is such a thing, over a long period of time, bhakti has been interpreted and interpreted and interpreted by many people, and as though it is a very simple thing that we can easily get it in the market with a little effort. No, it is not like that. Bhakti has a very deeper level understanding, because if you study the science behind bhakti, what Krishna has spoken in this 12th chapter is a very strong indication that many things what we take in as bhakti in this world, we have to reject it. It has no standing in front of the Shastra. So now we will go back to the 8th chapter. 8th, 9th and 10th will continue from now. And this 8th chapter is a very difficult chapter. Why it is a difficult chapter? You see, in astrology, the 8th house is referred to death. When the planets position the 8th house is related to death. And this 8th chapter you will see something interesting. It's all about death. Nothing else. Krishna has only one thing to say about death. That's what he's going to say in this 8th chapter. So on the one side it is very interesting chapter also, because that's what's waiting for us, isn't it? So from that point of view, it's a very important chapter. And again, you will see when we go through this chapter, what all misconceptions we are carrying about death with us. So many misunderstandings about death. We have, like bhakti, we have manufactured about death also, in the same way. We are thinking that certain things, oh, if I do these things, everything will be alright, I'll get through somehow. Somebody will take me there and get me out of this place, I'll be alright in the next life. It is not so simple as Krishna mentions in this chapter. Only when you understand that if there is not enough preparation in this life, death will not be a very pleasant thing at the end. Will not be a very pleasant thing. Why? Because Krishna has given us this life to prepare for death actually. That is how it is. We have been sent here to get out of this state of death. That means we don't have to go through death again, once more. This body what we have got, we have to give it up one day. But after that, experiencing death is again a painful situation. So that is why that 8th chapter is a difficult chapter to explain also, because there is so many technical words there. And not only that, while concluding the 7th chapter, Krishna has put an introduction to the 8th chapter in the 7th chapter itself. If you observe all these things, you will see the interesting side of the 8th chapter. Even if you read that purport of if you read that 8th chapter in the Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, sometimes it is very hard. We know it is very hard. You won't make any sense. Ultimately, you will see a lot of words there. Adibodham, Adidevam, Adhiyatyam. So many things mentioned there. What does it all means? You won't get anywhere, any clear understanding of that. So therefore, when the 7th chapter finished there, the question started coming from Arjuna. Because 7th chapter is also equally important, isn't it? If you remember, we discussed 7th chapter, knowledge of the absolute. If you have followed up that chapter, if you remember that still, you will know how difficult that chapter is. The 7th chapter was, isn't it? So from 7th chapter, we are moving on to this 8th chapter. And here Krishna is saying here that a difficult chapter. From the very beginning I have to, and every chapter is difficult. Bhagavad Gita, there is no chapter which is easy. If you take, probably the only easiest chapter is the first chapter itself, where they were in the battlefield and they were ready to fight. That's all basically. And Arjuna started talking to Krishna, and Krishna didn't say anything in that chapter, so therefore the chapter is very easy to follow. So Krishna didn't say anything. But from the second chapter onwards, when Krishna started speaking, he started bringing out the truth. In our spiritual life also you can see, before we get to know the truth, what the truth is, you will have to go through a lot of experiences in this world. Isn't it? So many things in that process you will accept and then you will reject it later. That's a part of spiritual life. It is not that everything what we took on the first day will remain with us till the end. Many things will come to us, we will leave it behind. Later on, as and when we get a deeper understanding, we will leave them behind. We will say like this, in them days I didn't know anything about it, so I just took it as accepted it. People always have this experience, isn't it? So, similarly, here in Bhagavad Gita also, as soon as we leave that first chapter, and from then onwards, from second chapter is also a very difficult chapter. Krishna spoke about particularly about the Sangyam and Karma in that chapter. Contents of the Bhagavad Gita summarized. It's a summary of everything there. The very cream of Bhagavad Gita in that second chapter. And then from third chapter onwards, Krishna started talking about Karma. Isn't it? Karma Yoga. How, if you don't do that first, you don't have to go further. It's no pointless after that. If that third chapter is not taken on board, then all your so-called bhakti, jnanam and all is a waste of time as far as Krishna is concerned. So that's why, even when that preliminary understanding of Karma Yogam has not happened, and they are talking about Bhakti Yogam, and that is very painful to see that. That even the very basic, what Krishna is saying, that's why right after second chapter, Krishna took Karma Yogam first as a topic to understand, to make it clear to us that how karma is the whole problem behind everything what's happening. And so third, fourth, fifth, sixth, all these chapters are nothing but a supplementary to that Karma Yogam chapter. The first 6 chapters, the Karma Yogam is the important topic, and right up to the 6th chapter, Karma is the topic that is discussed there. That we have seen when we discussed those chapters. Then in the 7th chapter, Krishna called it as Jnana Vijnana Yoga, which we discussed as knowledge of the Absolute. How to understand Krishna? What is Krishna? That begins in that chapter. In that chapter it begins there. Mayasaktam anapata yogam yunjan madashraya asamshayam samagramam yadajnasasi tacharano jnanam teham savijnanam idam bhakshyam asheshada yalpnyatva nehabhuyanyur jnadavyam ashesha. Krishna is saying there so many things about himself. He is introducing himself to us in that chapter, in the Jnana Vijnana Yoga. Understand me, understand you, he says. Who I am and who you are. And that our connection with Krishna is that chapter, 7th chapter. Where he says there, Bhumi, Apam, Analo, Vayu, Kham, Manam, Buddhi, Evacha, Ahangari, Diyame, Vina, Prakriti, Ashtada. That we are made of these 8 things. Ashtada Prakriti, which are the 5 material elements, then mind, intelligence and false ego. That is enough. And what is Krishna? Apareyam idastanyam prakriti vidhime param. Krishna is that. What is that? Jiva Bhudam Mahabhaho. Which is Krishna himself has become Jiva. In other words, Jiva is nothing but the same consciousness. Krishna is consciousness. And that consciousness, when it accepts, when it is conditioned by false ego, he becomes Jiva. Jiva Bhudam Mahabhaho Edam Dharite Jagat. So, an understanding of us, what we are, with these 8 things, 5 material elements, mind, intelligence, false ego, plus this, that is what we are. And Krishna is saying, Apareyam idastvanyam prakriti. He is Para Prakriti and we are Apara Prakriti. So, Para Prakriti, Apara Prakriti. Krishna broke into 2 in that chapter, and he discussed about himself, about us in that chapter. There's a lot of things Krishna spoke. which you may have to go back to that chapter and look at it. So here, when we come to this 8th chapter, very difficult chapter also to explain. I'll go through the chapter. If you have got it, what Krishna is saying there, then you will feel a great deeper understanding of Bhagavad Gita. Because this 8th chapter, as I mentioned, it's all about death. Death is the most important topic discussed in this chapter. Why? Krishna considers life is only worthwhile if you prepare yourself for death. Otherwise it's not worthwhile. All other things what you have done, who is going to take notice of all these things? What we have done. Many big people have come here and they have gone. Who cares about it? All that. But if Krishna's message in this 8th chapter, if we have taken seriously and understood the intricacies of death, how death is, how Krishna has set up the system in such a way, how we are controlled in all circumstances, and if we don't see the subtlety of all these things, because subtlety is spiritual life. Spiritual life is nothing but subtlety. That subtleness of the 8th chapter, if that goes in, you will see that is not a very simple affair, like we think about that. At the moment, what do we know about that? We know only one thing about that we will be lying in somewhere. Either there will be doctors or nurses to give us something, and they'll be trying to fix the body at different places, wherever it's giving trouble. And one day, the soul leaves the body, which they are not bothered about. All they will do is that they will give you a certificate. You're dead. This is what our understanding of death at the moment, isn't it? This is what most of the people think about death. That our relatives will be standing there to get the certificate so that they can take him to the mortuary or to the burial place, wherever it is. The business is over with that. But Krishna has not spoken in that way. Krishna is talking to us what is death, and a very detailed understanding of it, what is happening at the time of death. That's why this 8th chapter is a very important chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. You can see why. Because to get this chapter going itself, it is a difficult thing. Because in the beginning itself, Krishna put some very highly technical words. Adhibhudam, Adhidevam, Adhyajnam, all he says there. What is Adhibhudam, what is Adhidevam, what is Adhyajnam? Is very rarely understood by people in the proper way, which you can see. They are reading it, they are repeating it. Doesn't mean anything more than that. Lord Shiva had these famous devotees, 63 Nayanmars. They are famous for them. And they also sang this same problem. It is not only in the Vaishnava Siddhantam, in Shaiva Siddhantam also the same thing happens. They song about death, and they also, when the realizations came to them, when they got released from this body, they, accordingly, they sung about their experience in this life. Because there were personalities also, when they were, while living in this body, they are great devotees, while living in this body itself, they got released from the body. So they sung about the experiences what they had. So only based on that you can start this topic of death to discuss in that way. From the experience of those devotees who, while living in this world, they escape from death. When we say they escape from the death, what it means is, death was not anymore a cause of anxiety for them, because while living in this body itself, they came to know they are not this body. Then death is not an issue anymore, isn't it? Why death is so frightening to us sometimes? Because we think that is coming one day to all of us, is it not? So, same thing, Sundaramurti Swami also mentioned the same thing, that we can only begin in that way. Buddha also said the same thing. Lord Buddha, what he did was that on a Vaishakha Paurnami day, Vaishakha month, on Paurnami day, in Buddha Gaya, in Gaya, where Buddha was engaged in the meditation, so Buddha realized the truth. On that particular day, he realized the truth. And he understood that so many lifetimes I have been building these buildings. That's the language they use. Building the buildings means, I've been building so many buildings means, I've been getting different bodies. This is nothing but, we build this body, we build this house where we are living, is it not? Due to our karma in this world, according to karma vasana, according to our sankalpam inside, this will generate the next body. So who builds the body? We build the body ourselves. So that's what is in this form of the new buildings we have constructed one after the other. 8.4 billion different buildings we have built. And only what happens is, when you finally find out who is constructing this building, then you have escaped. The person who is creating, then you don't have to build any more body, any more building after that. Once you find out who is building all these different buildings, if you have found that out, then you don't have to build any more after that, because that comes to the end of that. So indication to that is what is in this chapter in the beginning itself. So first thing what Krishna says is, stop building these new buildings. That's how subtle this whole chapter is. In order to tell us that don't accept another body again. Krishna is putting it in this way to us, that don't create another, find out who the builder is. If you have found that out, then no more new buildings after that. In other words, to tell in a very nice way that don't transmigrate again to another body. That is the beginning of this chapter. That's why this chapter begins like that. So, first instruction is stop building. Stop this construction work. Come to an end. You had built enough bodies before. Again you are now building for the next life, the next building. You are building now for the next building, isn't it? So like this he kept on building different bodies. Sundaramurti mentions this. He says, I was a grass before, then I became a worm, then I became a snake. All these buildings we have built and we got inside that, those buildings. So that's what he mentions here. And you'll see in Bhajagovindam also we said that Punarabi Jananam, Punarabi Maranam, Punarabi Janani Jadare Shainam. Again birth, again death. And then what happens? Again goes back to another womb of another mother. Janani Jadare Shainam. It is samsare. Acharya Swami says, this transmigration of the soul from one body to another, bahudustare, it's the most difficult thing to happen to anybody. Kripaya pare pahi murare, asking Krishna to show some mercy to take me out of this cycle of birth and death. There is no other way. This is our problem in this life. There is no other problem. This changing body business, that is causing the whole issue. Sundaramurti Swamiji mentioned the same thing. Here Acharya Swamiji also says the same thing. Punarabi Jananam, Punarabi Maranam. Punarabi Janani Jadare Shainam. Birth and death is one thing. But 10 months you have to go and live in another womb of another mother and go through all the miseries in there. It is samsare, bahudustare. It is the most difficult thing. Kripaya pare, pahi murare. Krishna, show some mercy and take us out of this cycle. That's how they have prayed to this. So once you get absorbed in the building, then you have lost it. That's another interesting thing. If you, suppose you have built some building and you got busy with the building, then there is no chance of coming out from that. Krishna is going to warn us that in this chapter. So how careful we have to be. First thing, we have to stop building new buildings. Secondly, whatever building we have got it, we should not get too busy with that building also. You know what it means, isn't it? Yeah. It's all spoken in a way that somehow the message wants to get in somehow. It's not getting in, that's why we have to keep repeating this in all different ways. It's spoken like that. So, because if you get absorbed in the new building, then the trouble will start from there. There will be trouble from there. Because once you get into this building, new building, what happens is, you will come to know that there is a lot of problems in the building, what we have got now. In this building what we have got, is a lot of problems, isn't it? Building will give you a lot of trouble from different places from the building. So that's what Buddha said. Lord Buddha said the same thing. He said, this is what I don't want to continue anymore. So, once again, I'm not going to create another building, he says there. And not only that, I want to escape from this building what I have created. Escape from this building. So, and this can only happen that if he realizes every moment that if you realize this, that Krishna is doing all these things through us. Krishna is behind it. If we know that, we will get the proper instruction at the proper time in life, every moment, what we have to face through in life. Because that is the important part of that. That is what Krishna is going to take us into this chapter with this understanding. Suppose you don't understand Krishna is behind it. Who has told us to build a building? Krishna has told us to build a building. And who put us into this situation? Krishna has put us into the situation. Who got us attracted to the building? Krishna put us into that attraction also. Behind everything, Krishna is there. Without Krishna's sanction, nothing is happening. We have a lot of difficulties in understanding these things. I know that. It is not so simple. On one side, Krishna will say 3 modes of material nature is doing everything. On the other side, we will say that false ego is doing everything. On the third place, you will notice that we have some freedom also, free will, what about that? All these questions will come. These things have to be understood in a proper way. That will come when you study Shastram in a proper way. That you will understand that 3 modes of material nature has its role to play. We have our role to play. Krishna has his role to play also. Behind everything, it is Krishna behind. But how Krishna operates, that we have to know that. Then we have got our karma behind it, prarabdham, operating there. So people ask this question, which one of them is doing it? Is the prarabdham doing it, or the mind is doing it, or the modes of nature is doing it, or Krishna is doing it? Who is doing it? This question always comes, isn't it? People ask this question all the time. They ask this question. Why this question is coming is, if you understand what they are, what this modes of nature is, what prarabdham is, what Krishna is, we have to study Bhagavad Gita. There is no other way. Once you go through Bhagavad Gita full, and then if you have done enough contemplation of what Krishna has spoken, these things will be very clear. That there won't be any confusion about that. These questions will not come back again and bother us anymore. So, in this chapter, 8th chapter, Krishna is saying here that Krishna is doing everything and Krishna will give us the instruction as and when we need, provided we know that Krishna has told us that what he expects from us. What is that? Stop building. That's the first thing. Right now, while living in this building, we are busy with maintaining this building, and we are also busy with building the next house where we want to live. Isn't it? That's what we are happening. Through our karma vasana and our activities, we are creating the next body, next material body. While doing all that thing, we are also busy with this building, this body, how to keep it going as long as it can. This is our life. This is how much freedom we have in the so-called life. These things, you cannot change it. We are all caught up in that state. Krishna is saying like that. So all these things, keeping this in mind, what Krishna said was in the 7th chapter, while concluding this chapter, Krishna says, as an introduction to the 8th chapter, he mentions there, in the 29th verse, if you look, you will see there, Jara Maranamokshaya Mama Shaktayadam Diye Te Brahma Tadvidhu Krishnam Adhyalpam Karmacha Akhilam. You will see a verse there. Jara Maranamokshaya Mama Shaktayadam Diye Te Brahma Tadvidhu Krishnam Adhyalpam Karmacha Akhilam. That one verse is a right introduction to the 8th chapter. Krishna is saying there, this building business, what we have discussed now. If you want to free yourself from this business, what is that? Jara, Maranam, Moksha. Jara means old age, Marana means death, Moksha means freedom from that. If this thing has to happen, Krishna is saying there, Mama Shakta Yatandiye. You should understand Bhagavad Gita and you should take completely my shelter. Both necessary. Understand the signs from Bhagavad Gita, how things are happening with us. Simultaneously, Mama Ashirte Yatandiye, you should put all your endeavor, all your sadhana, all your effort to escape from this world, completely taking my shelter, Krishna says. Because any sadhana what you do without taking Krishna's shelter is incomplete. It will go life after life because you have not taken shelter of Krishna. That's the main thing. Mama Ashirte Yatandiye, Krishna says. He uses that word very correctly there. Mama Ashirtya. Only by taking Krishna's shelter and Yatandiye, you should endeavor. You should engage in spiritual life, put all your best efforts, as Krishna has spoken. Do everything what's necessary, but dependence on Krishna all the time. Without that, sadhana will not work. That means surrender is a key to sadhana. Otherwise, sadhana has no meaning. Nowadays we make it like this, oh, you just chant 16 rounds, you chant. And that's it. Or 4 regulative principles, that's enough. Where is the surrender there? There is no surrender. And because of that, there is so much misunderstanding. And then something goes wrong in life, we start saying that why Krishna is doing this to me. We say like this. Because I have come to Krishna with a business attitude. I'll do all this for you, you do this for me. How this will work? That's not Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is not saying that. Bhagavad Gita is a science. It's telling us that death is there. It's a reality of life. But before that happens, try to understand this, how that process works. Process is like this. You are busy in construction so many lifetimes. Building so many buildings you have built. And now also you are building your next building, you are preparing it. But at the moment you are busy with this building as well as the next building you are going to build to live, the next building. This is what's going on at the moment. But if you want to stop this construction business, first thing is, Krishna is saying, Jara marana mokshaya mama ashirte yatandiye te brahma tadvidhu krishnam adhyalmam karmacha agilam. He says, adhyalmam karmacha agilam. We'll come to that verse. So you will notice there that Krishna has put a very big introduction to the 8th chapter in that verse. That is probably it is the last verse or one but last. Last but one, I think, isn't it? Yeah. Last but one verse in the 7th chapter. So that is how Krishna is taking us to the 8th chapter. So let's have a look at that verse because, yeah. Intelligent persons, I'll read a translation. Intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental and fruitive activities. Now, to be honest with you, that translation, what has been given there, it cannot carry that message involved in that 2 lines of that verse. Te Brahma tad vidu krishnam adhyatmam karma chagira. But that is all you can do in English. You can't do anything more than that. Prabhupada has done the best possible thing, here it has been translated. But if you understand the spirit of that verse, what the message is carried by that verse, you will really see how deep that verse is indicating to. Prabhupada, yes, literally you can see. Now, somebody reads this, they are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental and fruitive activities. What do we understand by that? How would you explain that if somebody asks you that? Te Brahma tadvidu krishnam adhyatmam karmaja agilam. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental and fruitive activities. It says. So there are so many places in the Bhagavad Gita like this, which is not anybody's fault. That is due to the depth of the science of Bhagavad Gita. That is what it is. And it is difficult to explain that in a translation or in a purport. And it is a matter of, because you have to remember, Bhagavad Gita is knowledge of the Upanishads, isn't it? Upanishads knowledge, Krishna has brought it and summarized and packaged it and given it to us in this way. And therefore, that Upanishads background is a critical factor in the Bhagavad Gita. There are so many things which Krishna didn't explain to Arjuna. Obviously, Krishna expected Arjuna to know this. What is Adhyatmam? What is Adidevam? What is Adiyajnam? All these kind of things. Yeah. So here, in this chapter, you will see that Jaramarana Mokshaya Mamashate Edandiye Te Brahma Tadvidu Krishnam Adhyatmam Karma Chagilam, he mentions, and that was the translation. And in response, ultimately, Krishna says there, Sadi Budhadi Devam Mam Sadi Enjaye Vidu Prayana Kale Bijamam Te Vidur Yukta Chedasa. Krishna closed that chapter there, the 7th chapter. What did he say? He says, those who know me as the Supreme Lord, as the governing principle of the material manifestation, who knows me as the one underlying all the demigods, and as the one who sustaining all sacrifices can, with steadfast mind, understand and know me even at the time of death. Now, if you read that translation, you will think, Krishna is saying, those who know me as the Supreme Lord. Yes, we all know you as the Supreme Lord. Then, as the governing principle of the material manifestation. Yes, we accept that you are the governing principle. And who know me as the one underlying all the demigods. Yes, we accept that also. And as the one sustaining all sacrifices. Yes, Shastra is saying that also. And with steadfast mind, understand and know me even at the time of death. So, know me even at the time of death. So, if you know all these things, there should be no problem, isn't it? At the time of death, everything should be just straightforward. But it's not so straightforward. Because it's not so straightforward, that is why this 8th chapter has come about. So, these two verses, Janamarana Mokshaya Mamashate Edandiye Te Brahma Tadvidu Krishnam Adhyalpam Karma Chagilam, and this Sadibhudadvi Evamam Sadiyajnjaye Vidu Prayana Kale Bijamam Te Vidur Yukta Chedasa. This is the introduction to the 8th chapter. Everything in the Bhagavad Gita is a flow of a knowledge in a very systematic way. It's flowing from 2nd chapter to the 18th chapter, which you will see when you keep studying that. So, these two verses Krishna has told Arjuna, and that confused Arjuna, obviously, and that is why Arjuna sat there in the chariot and says to Krishna, you put me in a very awkward state, he says to Krishna. You put in 2 verses so many things you said, and I don't get anything, head and tail of what you are saying. That's why he says that, Kim tad Brahma, Kim Adhyatmam, Kim Karma. What is this Adhyatmam means? What is this Brahma means? What is this Karma means? And then he says, what is Adibhuda means? What is Adidevam means? What does it all mean? Arjuna asked this question to Krishna. Now, Arjuna's case is not a problem because Krishna is there to tell him what is to be. Krishna can create that understanding in Arjuna's mind, is it not? But these questions Arjuna has asked on our behalf, because Vedavyasa Maharshi knew that the way Krishna has spoken to Arjuna in the battlefield will not be easier for everybody. There Arjuna had the understanding, and plus Krishna is there talking to him. So the 7th chapter is called Jnana Vijnana Yogam. And there Krishna completed that chapter by talking about Mumukshu. Mumukshu means, Janamarana Mokshaya Mamashate Edandiye. He is called a Mumukshu. Mumukshu means one who wants to escape. That is called Mumukshu. Escape from what? Escape from the cycle of birth and death. He is called Mumukshu. That's a technical word for that. So in that chapter, Krishna talked about Mumukshu. Mumukshu, that is what the word used there, Mumukshatam. Mumukshatam. Mumukshu means, what does Mumukshu means? One who wants freedom, he is called Mumukshu. One who wants freedom. At the moment, we don't have any freedom. We may think we have freedom. That is our foolishness. We don't have any freedom. What freedom have we got? We are doing all these things in life, and as soon as we leave the body, we get into the next body. And that body is not based on our desire, but is based on the karma what we do here. So where is the freedom? There is no freedom in anything. It is only an illusion in our mind that we have a lot of freedom. We have no freedom. When death will come, we have no freedom. Based on our prarabdham, or when the karma is exhausted, for which this body has been given, then we have to leave this body. There is no freedom there. And the next body, what we have created now, we don't know about it, but we will get it. It will be handed over to us in a plate as soon as we leave this body. So where is the freedom? Neither in leaving this body we have no freedom, nor in getting the next body we have any freedom. With all our planning, it is not going to work the way we wanted. Because we don't know about karma, how karma will generate the next body. That is the problem. That is the problem. How karma will generate the next body, that we don't know. And if you tell someone about liberation now, you will get frightened. You will get frightened because we don't know what liberation means. That's why. I don't want to lose my body now. If somebody tells me, that's what I will say first thing. So we can say, instead of saying liberation, we will use the word freedom. Freedom is the better word. Because everybody wants that freedom to decide what should happen. Would like to have it, but can't have it easily, isn't it? Because in reality, actual freedom is not is not having the freedom to decide what body you should have next. That's not the freedom. That's not the real freedom. Real freedom is freedom from the body itself, freedom from the body, freedom from the mind, freedom from the intelligence. This is called actually freedom. So, when you say freedom from the body, for example, what will you say? We will take it like this. What can I have with keeping this body together? Now, when I say I am within this body, I will think like this. Suppose you give me freedom. The condition I have is that I must be able to keep this body and I should have freedom. Krishna is putting to us in a different way. He is saying there, Janmam Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. Krishna says here, isn't it? Later on in the 13th or 14th chapter also Krishna is saying there, Janmam Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. Birth, death, old age and disease. 4 things Krishna talks about it there. In this chapter, 7th chapter, Krishna says, Jara Maranam Mokshaya. Mamashirte Yadandiye. So, in the conclusion of that 7th chapter, so keeping this understanding that freedom means, or liberation in other words called freedom means, when you escape from the old age and death, when you escape from the birth, death, old age and disease, that is what's called freedom. Not keeping this body as it is and asking for freedom, Krishna says that is meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. If you want to keep this body and you are asking for freedom, Krishna says it's not possible. So in 2 places in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 7th chapter, Krishna is saying, Jara Maranam Moksham. Moksha means freedom. That freedom from old age and death, number 1. Later on Krishna says, Janmam Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. Birth, death, old age and disease. Same thing. Here only he mentioned old age and death. There he talks about birth and disease also. 2 more things he has added to that. So there are 4 things and 2 of them are these 2 things. Jara and Maranam. Jara and Maranam, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. All of them together, Krishna is saying, if you are able to escape from all these things, that is freedom. That is how Krishna is defining freedom. Krishna's freedom is when you have got out of all these things. That is the real freedom. Not staying within this, the external freedom, what we are looking for in this world, is not what Krishna means. External freedom, you know what it means. For example, at 5 o'clock we will finish this class. And then you have the freedom to go, is it not? That is one kind of freedom. That's not the freedom Krishna is talking about. So that is the external things. So that is the freedom on the external side. But if you don't get the freedom inside, Krishna says it's not freedom. Real freedom, as far as Krishna, inside we are still slaves. Slaves of these things. What? Birth, death, old age and disease. We are still the slaves of that. So, in Krishna's point of view, that proper freedom is when you have freedom inside, not outside. Outside freedom is not taken very seriously. Because Krishna says here, you are still slave inside and you cannot be free from that. You cannot be free from that. So, therefore, you have to ask this question, why did Krishna speak Bhagavad Gita? In order to teach us about this freedom inside, not about the freedom outside. Krishna has no interest in that. That freedom outside is not important, freedom inside is important. That is why Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita was spoken for this reason, to get that freedom inside. And that is why all the great acharyas wrote their commentaries on Bhagavad Gita for the freedom from inside. For the freedom inside. Because this Bhagavad Gita is not a cultural activity. Many people are thinking that like that. It's a cultural activity. Or we'll arrange some Bhagavad Gita program, like a cultural activity, get a lot of people together and then make some children to learn some verses and they will sing like a parrot, they will sing those verses. And I'm not saying it's all wrong, but that's not good enough. That's the point. If this freedom, if you didn't get from Bhagavad Gita, then you haven't utilized the Bhagavad Gita properly. That's what it means. If you have not escaped from these four things, and you have not got that freedom from these four, then you have not succeeded in using Bhagavad Gita properly in life. That's the principle what Krishna is talking about. So, those things, like we do, for example, Gita Jayanti, we get all the people together, sit together and chant from beginning to end, read the translation, purport, everything, whatever, and then have a big feast and go home. That's fine. That's alright. In that lower level, that's fine. That's okay. There's nothing wrong in that, but that is in that level, you have to understand that. It's not going to take you very far. It will stay like that. Once a year, meet together, read it from beginning to end. And distribute a lot of Bhagavad Gita to sponsor others and 5 copies, 10 copies. So that's all nice. There's nothing wrong in that, but that is in a very, very lower basic level that is happening. If ever you see that Bhagavad Gita Krishna didn't give it to us to come once a year to read it out from beginning to end and go home after that. After big feast, we have all been first class devotees, pure devotees, we are all now. We have read Bhagavad Gita from beginning to end and go home totally satisfied. That's useless. Useless in the sense that that's not what is expected of us, in other words. Krishna is expecting a little more than that from us. He is giving us a very, very serious message to us about death. What does freedom means? And we don't take any of those things seriously, and we give our own spin on that, saying that this is how we understand Krishna, your Bhagavad Gita is, and start doing things like that. What can Krishna do about it? That's our foolishness, isn't it? Krishna is telling us this whole Bhagavad Gita is such a precise science of life in this world, what we have got in this material body, what is going to happen to this body. The whole subtlety of this whole Bhagavad Gita is so important that it is difficult to ignore that. So this Adhyatma Vidya or spiritual science, in other words, what does Bhagavad Gita is doing to us is that the real freedom Bhagavad Gita wants us to have, the proper freedom, the real freedom, he wants us to enjoy that, and it is for that purpose Bhagavad Gita was spoken. And all satsangam is meant for that purpose. Satsangam is meant for that purpose. Not only for a few minutes of meditation or thoughts about spiritual life. No. Ultimately, or people will think that sometimes that let me try it out for a while, Bhagavad Gita, what Bhagavad Gita says. If you all take Bhagavad Gita with that approach, nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. Sometimes people go to hear Bhagavad Gita, and when they go to Bhagavad Gita also, they don't understand what they want from Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is offering us some of the greatest thing what you cannot get anywhere else, isn't it? So with that seriousness, if you are not able to approach Bhagavad Gita, then it is a problem. It's a serious problem as well. And that is why you won't get many customers for Bhagavad Gita. They will buy the book and all, but if you want somebody who is genuinely serious about hearing about what Krishna has spoken, it will be very few, always. It is like that. So, so here, Krishna says here, like nowadays we can see many people after retirement they think, oh, let me listen to Bhagavad Gita a little bit. That is also, after retirement they think like that. So because to understand. But Bhagavad Gita's message is so profound and so important in life. Without that message properly going inside, spiritual life is not possible. It's not possible because it is so, the depth of the message is so deep. And just like we see here, that without this understanding, without that goal is not there, if you get into, just like you're driving a car, without knowing where you want to go, it will be similar situations. You'll be driving here, there, everywhere, same thing. Ultimately, when the fuel runs out, you'll stop the car, isn't it? The same situation will happen in our life also. So, and such people, they have done a lot of things and ultimately they left this world without any deeper understanding what Krishna has spoken. So, the first thing Krishna is saying there is that there should be a goal in life. There should be a goal in life. So, in order that the goal to have in a person's life, he should have sufficient ability or thought power inside. Power to think properly, to develop that thought power inside. Not follow like a sheep everything follow like a sheep. Because Bhagavad Gita is so interesting for those who are serious about it. Those who are not serious about it, it will be boring also. Because Vichara Shakti means able to accept what Krishna is saying and that seriousness inside to understand what Krishna is saying. That is the most important thing. So, so that thought power, thinking power is necessary inside. Only then that goal will get firmed up inside. If one develops that thought power inside, that they should think about it. Thinking is not a wrong thing. We have to think about it and understand what Krishna is saying, because through that process the goal will become firmly established inside. Whereas many people, they think that, oh, we just have to go and sit there and then we will go home and we'll come back again next time and listen again. That will go on like this, but that is not what Krishna is saying here. Krishna is saying that the goal is important, because if you don't know the goal, why am I studying Bhagavad Gita? For what purpose am I taking Bhagavad Gita seriously? So only if it is there, that thought power has developed inside, it will have its effect very fast. It will have its effect very fast. Otherwise, even if 100 years I sit here and keep talking about Bhagavad Gita, and if you keep on hearing that, if you are not thinking about it, then your goal will not be your important thing. You may catch up something here and there, but the goal will not be the important factor. Goal will not be the important factor. So, till you yourself start analyzing this Bhagavad Gita, if that does not happen, this will remain only as an entertainment. Nothing more than that. It is very unfortunate that many times people just do not take it seriously. That's a very difficult thing when they do not take Bhagavad Gita very seriously. Because they are got habituated to this, that, well, I will listen to whatever we are talking about. It's not going deeper than that. How will it go deeper? Till you start reading and thinking about it. Thinking is an important aspect of that. It cannot be written off also. And that is why Krishna is saying that these chapters from now on, it does generate a lot of thoughts inside, questions, thoughts. And that means it requires a lot of contemplation also. We have to start thinking the way Krishna has presented to us. At the moment, in our conditioned way, we think in one direction. But here is a science, Bhagavad Gita is a science of the soul, science of the soul it is. And to capture that message, we have to start relating with Bhagavad Gita in some way. Some connection has to happen there. So, otherwise what will happen is you will hear Bhagavad Gita and you will say that, oh, it was a nice class, and give me a compliment and you will go. And that's no use to me or use to you either. That's not what is expected from the. So Krishna is saying here, Jaramarana Mokshaya, in the last chapter, started with that, isn't it? Jaramarana Mokshaya. So, very interesting how Krishna begins. Jaramarana Mokshaya, he says, if you want freedom from death, that's how he introduces to us. Now, nobody likes to talk about death, isn't it? You will see this. Everywhere in the world it is like that. As soon as you talk about death, people don't like it. They just don't like it. They say, we don't talk about such things, they say. I don't know why it is like that, but it is like that in this world. When you bring up the matter, or somebody died, we talk about that. Well, something must have happened to him, but we don't die. He only dies, we don't die. Or some wrong conclusion we have caught in our understanding. We don't want to discuss about that. And because even in great poets and literature who write big literature, they also never begins with a death as in their beginning, because it's considered to be inauspicious to talk about death. Whereas Krishna enjoys talking about death more than anything else. He begins everything with death. Everything related to Krishna begins with the death. Parikshit Maharaj begins with the death. Isn't it? Here, again war going on, millions get slaughtered, and again death is what he wants to discuss. You start thinking, what is this Supreme Personality of Godhead? He hasn't got anything else to do except to talk about death. This is how we think. And therefore what happens, we, based on our mind and mood, we say, we'll pick those parts of Bhagavatam which is very nice to read. Rukmini got married to Krishna. Everybody likes it. Beautiful part. Such a nice feast. Everybody came, all friends, relations, everybody came. Likes to read that, isn't it? Krishna's marriage to Rukmini. People love that. And why? Because marriage everybody likes. Everybody likes to talk about the marriage, organizing marriage, attending marriages. This is our daily business in this world, isn't it? We have lived through this whole life. So we find happiness in all that things. And similarly, in Bhagavatam also when we read, as soon as the important topic we bring about, they don't want that. No, this death and all, we don't discuss such things. That's all for others, whoever wants to discuss. We've got not much more nice things in the Bhagavatam. Krishna married Rukmini, and then Krishna married Jambavati. Krishna married so many wives. He had a wonderful householder life. And even though we are not living like Krishna in such a nice way, but it's in a small level, we are also having a nice householder life, feeling happiness in that way. So this will not help in understanding Bhagavad Gita. They are there in Bhagavatam and all because we are so dull in our heads that to get this message of the soul, we require all that things. Vedavyasa has incorporated so many things there in the Bhagavatam. But in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is talking, Jaramarana Mokshaya Mamashate Tandiye, he says. If you have that goal in your life, in your mind, then you can hear this 8th chapter. That is the message. If you have that goal in your mind, that you want to free yourself from the old age and death, if that is your intention, if that's your goal in life, then listen to this 8th chapter. That is why Krishna takes us to the 8th chapter. So, therefore you will see this all the time happening, that we people, this concept in life that something is auspicious, something is inauspicious, isn't it? Marriage is considered to be auspicious, death is considered to be inauspicious, isn't it? This is mundane. This has nothing to do with spirituality. But it has permeated into spirituality, and we started thinking that, if I go for all the marriages and attend all the marriages, it's very auspicious. I've done my bit. It's a spiritual occasion. So the temples also says, get everybody married in the temple and make it very auspicious in the temple. It's like a wedding factory, as they call it. It runs like this all the time. It's nothing to do with spirituality. Because we are like that. That's what we want. We don't want the Bhagavad Gita. We want all these things. Therefore, we make it like that. And we think that we are all very spiritual. But spirituality is something different than all that things. If we don't take Krishna's message seriously, we are not spiritual. And the message is more important. That's why that Krishna is saying here that all the problems gets resolved when you free yourself from the death. That is the fundamental message in the Bhagavad Gita as well as in the Srimad Bhagavatam. If you look, that is the important point. So all problems gets resolved when Parikshit was given Brahmovadesham, isn't it? If you look in the 12th canto, the 5th chapter is Brahmovadesham. What is a Brahmovadesham means? Brahmovadesham is this. What did Shuka Brahmashi says to Parikshit? Shuka says to Parikshit, Parikshit, there is no such thing called death. There is no such thing called death. And you are different from that body. That message, Sukadeva Goswami managed to get it into Parikshit's head. Parikshit got it. That's what happened in that 5th chapter, in the 12th canto. Aham Brahma Param Dhama Brahmaham Paramam Padam Evan Samikshanyadhaya Aham Brahma Param Dhama Brahmaham Paramam Padam. I am Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi. That stage has happened to him, to Parikshit at that point. So, and that is the point when he escaped from death, isn't it? Parikshit escaped from death at that point. That is the point. Up to that point, Parikshit was thinking death is coming, death is coming. Takshaka is on his way to bite him. The curse happened in the 1st canto when Parikshit was cursed by the Brahmana boy Shringi, that in 7 days time from now, he will be bitten by Takshaka and he will die. From that point onwards, he has been sitting there listening to Shukadeva Goswami, Srimad Bhagavatam, thinking that I am going to die in a few days. 7 days time, 6 days time, 5 days time, 4 days time, like that. It's coming to an end. He's going to die now. Takshaka is already on his way. He was standing there. Shukadeva Goswami, in that 12th canto, in the 5th chapter, that chapter is called Brahmovadesham. Brahmovadesham means, by that Upadesham or by that instructions, Parikshit got released from the misconception about death. Jnanam has gone inside. Saying Jnanam, what we are discussing, just like in the Sushupti state we mentioned this, how in the deep sleep state you realized that when I gave up my body, mind, intelligence and ego, in my pure state of consciousness, I was in the happy position, in the deep sleep. That same experience, Sukadeva Goswami brought it to Parikshit in the vacant state. That's what happened there. In that 12th canto, 5th chapter, that's what happens there. The same experience in the Sushupti state, that knowledge, Parikshit experienced that in the vacant state, in the 12th canto, 5th chapter. That is what is called Brahmovadesham. Brahmovadesham is that. How to get that in the vacant state. And that is the mercy of the spiritual master, like in that case, Sukadeva Goswami, what he did to Parikshit at that time. The Evam Samikshanyadhaya Atmanyadhaya Nishkale, it says there in that Bhagavatam. Atmanyadhaya Nishkale. In other words, he realized that I am Atma, I am not this body. That realization happened to him at that time. So beginning with the fear of death, Bhagavatam, and at the end, Parikshit leaving the body without any fear, with full knowledge. This is what we see in the Bhagavatam. So, this concept that death is inauspicious and marriage is auspicious, this is all our concept. This has nothing to do with spiritual life. So, the beginning itself, Krishna is saying, Jaramarana mokshaya mamashrite yatandiye. How one should endeavor in spiritual life. That's what he is saying. First thing he says here, completely taking my shelter. Without that, you cannot have spiritual life. Taking shelter of Krishna is the most important thing. Without that, you cannot have spiritual life. Jaramarana mokshaya mama ashrite yatandiye. Krishna says there. So, Krishna says, taking my shelter, continue your effort. That's how it should be. Taking Krishna's shelter, continue your effort. And those people who are doing like that, they are given the title Mumukshu. Mumukshu means, is that people. Taking Krishna's shelter, who are endeavoring for freedom from death, who are endeavoring for self-realization, or who are engaged in spiritual life. Taking Krishna's shelter, engaged in spiritual life, they are called Mumukshu. They are called Mumukshu. That is what that word coming from. Moksham, from that word comes Mukshatvam. Where it comes from. Jaramarana Mokshaya Mamashite. So in those two lines, Krishna is saying there that those who are taking my shelter and engaging in spiritual activity, in sadhana, with the completely taking my shelter, they are called Mumukshu. We can see this ourselves in our own life in this world. Keep a mirror in front of us and look at it and see in which state are we. In which state are we? Are we ready for that? And if you are not ready for this, what Krishna is talking about, this knowledge of Mukshatvam and freedom from the cycle of birth and death, if you are not ready for that, then we can live in this world like anybody else. Krishna is not saying you have to leave this world or anything. He says you stay here and do what you like. I have no problem with that. That's how Krishna is. He's never put any... So, but what the problem then is, if we take that approach, well, this Bhagavad Gita is too much for me, so let me do my own way. I live in this world and whatever I get it, I'll take it in that way. It's a little troublesome. The reason is, then Krishna has to put us through a lot of difficulties to bring us to that point. If intelligence is to accept that, then Krishna is speaking this. It's such an important message, this Bhagavad Gita. And if our mind and intelligence is not in tune with that, and we start thinking that, oh, this is too much for me, I don't want to get involved in that, let me live my life in this world somehow, manage it, and whatever happens I'll take it. Then Krishna says, I have no problem with that, but Krishna has to do something then to bring us to that point. That is Krishna's way. Krishna is saying that, well, then you have to go through some experiences in this world before you come to that point of realization. So then what Krishna does is he gives us a lot of distress and prepare ourselves, mature ourselves for that. And just like in the olden days, if you remember, that the blacksmith used to, when he has to work with the iron, what he has to do, he has to put it into the fire and make it red hot, and then he will suddenly dip it into the water, and then on the anvil he puts it and start smashing it to take the shape whatever it wants to create from that. Isn't it? In the olden days, like when today we have these big furnaces and everything where iron can be transformed into a molten liquid-like thing, and they can foundry, they make the casting whichever they wanted. But in the olden days we didn't have these huge furnaces like now. So the blacksmith used to do in that way. So similarly, what will the nature do? Nature will keep putting us through a lot of trouble like that. And how it does is, he will give you some happiness, and then he'll give you a lot of distress, and then suddenly he'll give you a little happiness. And he will keep on doing this again and again, and one day you will get fed up with both the happiness. But that may take some time. That's the way Maya works. Maya's way of doing things are like that. On the one hand, she will give you a lot of distress. Suddenly she'll put a chocolate in your mouth and say, taste this chocolate, it's very nice. Then as soon as you get the chocolate, you will say, well, I can tolerate all this distress for a while, it's not a problem. Live with that. This way Maya does with us. Maya makes us think like that. So, Manikyavachakar mentions this. He says, he has beaten me and beaten me and beaten me to such an extent and made me to eat everything in this world, all the miseries of this world. And why? Because he done this to make me matured. I would not have come to this stage otherwise, he says. Because to come to that stage is not easy, to come to that. I can keep saying this, Jayamarana Mokshaya Mamashate Randiye, but in our own inside that change to happen is very, very difficult. So, to receive that higher wisdom, which will completely release us, which will not give us anything fascinating in this world. That is the difficulty here. That everything else in this world is fascinating in different ways, isn't it? But this release will not be very fascinating for us because we are not getting anything from this world. Our mind is so absorbed in the world outside. So, in the world outside, external world, what is important for us is our money is important, wealth is important, our fame, how famous you are, how much power you have, and your vanity, all these things are important in this world, isn't it? In the world outside, all this is important. But Krishna is saying here, these things will not give you adhyalmam. That is what in that verse, Jaramarana mokshaya mamashritte yadandiye te brahma tadvidu krishnam adhyatmam karmachaghilam. Adhyatmam means all these things are all useless. Krishna is saying they will give you some position in the world outside. Fame, followers, money, beauty, all kinds of other things. You may get some recognition in this world. But once you come to spiritual life, they are all useless. Absolutely useless. They won't give you anything substantially from that you can get in your spiritual life. That's what he is mentioning here, Adhyalpam. That Adhyalpam word is referring to that. Adhyalpam means, what will Adhyalpam give? Adhyalpam means spiritual life. What will spiritual life will give you? Spiritual life will give you, it will give you peace inside, Shanti. Shanti is what is on offer, and perfection inside, and those personalities who have got that Vichara Shakti, thought power inside, Vedam is telling us they are called Dhira. That means those who have managed to find the beauty of the peace inside a person, the life, and able to see the vanity and the fruitlessness of all the things, recognition in this world and other external things, and able to come out of that and start recognizing this peace as more important inside. And if he is going in that direction, and if his thought power is working in that way, Vedam calls him as Dhira. He is the one who is called Dhira. Dhira means he has got the right understanding, right intelligence, and he is working in the right direction. That is why it is spoken like that. Dhira. Dhi means intelligence, buddhi, intelligence. And one who absorbed in intelligence, jnanam, he is called Dhira. The word Dhira is like that. Dhi means intelligence. Dhira means one who is absorbed in the intellectual level, trying to understand the beauty of Bhagavad Gita, understand the Bhagavad Gita properly. In other words, that's what. So such people who are engaging in that direction, they will have that Vichara Shakti. The Shakti means ability to think and analyze things properly. We have a long way to go. There's no doubt about that. We have a long way to go because we are not taking Bhagavad Gita seriously. We are not taking Bhagavatam seriously. The right respect and the seriousness what Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam requires, we don't have it. That's a known thing. And we, on the other hand, we have a lot of misunderstanding about many things about Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. Both of them have come from the greatest personalities, Sudeva Goswami and Krishna, isn't it? Bhagavad Gita has come from Krishna and Srimad Bhagavatam has come from Sudeva Goswami. And not knowing their greatness, not knowing their realizations or the subtlety of their words, we are simply making it as a normal literature, and we are not even learned how to respect this literature, Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. So anyway, Krishna is saying here that only this recognition will come of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam only if this thought process builds up inside a person, Vichara Shakti, in other words. So such people who don't value anything in this world, that means power, position, money, fame, popularity and things like that, those who don't value them anymore, but those who value the peace inside, Shanti, perfection inside, Purnada, all the words in the Shastram is like that, Ananda, Brahman, those who value them, only they will develop that thought power. Only they can develop that thought power. Because if your mind is all busy with the recognition in the world, how can you develop spiritual life? That's not possible. It will never be possible. It will simply remain as a show. It's not going to go anywhere. If you want the recognition of this world, what does this world mean at the end? So that understanding at least must come to us before you start studying this 8th chapter, Krishna is saying. Because it's so important that our interest at the moment is in the world. A lot it is in the world. Our name, our fame, money, followers, recognition and what not, everything. Everything is world oriented. Nothing is centered around the soul and the Shanti, Purnada, perfection. What Krishna refers to in the Bhagavad Gita as perfection of life, inside. That inside quality, none of them is there. What to do? So that's why only when that happens, Krishna is saying that thought power will develop inside. What is that thought power? Thought power is this, that he is able to say very clearly to himself that none of these things outside is important for me. I am concerned about my own spiritual realization inside. When that happens, natural way, Krishna says, your Shraddha will build up, Vichara Shakti, the thought power will build up, and those people who are absorbed in that way, Krishna says he is Dhira. So introducing that chapter, Krishna is saying here that those who have sitting in the body, while sitting in this body, while sitting in this body, if I start realizing that old age is coming, disease is coming, death is coming, and I want to escape from this. I want to escape from this. What should I do for that? This question will only come to those people. Otherwise they won't think about it. See, our spiritual life today is based on what? It's based on the understanding that Prabhupada came here. Prabhupada opened so many centers, distributed a lot of books, and we all together sit and chant and go on like this. That's fine, that's okay. But when it comes to Shastram, it's a little bit more serious than that. Shastram is telling us, that Krishna is telling us very openly, that if you have started seeing this problem of life, of this body, that death is coming, old age is coming, disease is coming, and I have to go through this, and as soon as I leave this body, another body is waiting there for me, next building, what I have created, and nothing is working. I cannot maintain this building either. This building will collapse one day. Next building is also going to collapse another day. And the building after that will also collapse another day. One who is thinking all these things all the time, and these problems are coming one after the other, I want to escape from this. Krishna is saying, those who want to escape from all these things, he is Adhyatma. Only then he is Adhyatma. Otherwise he is not Adhyatma. At the moment, what happened? People are busy building societies, communities, and all sorts of things in the name of spiritual life. That's all fine. In that level, it's okay if that's what you want in life. And social life, and it expands like that, isn't it? Like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that Maya is like this. That you start one project, that will give you inspiration for starting hundreds of projects from that. And that from each hundreds of those projects, another hundreds projects will come out. So like this, your projects will keep on expanding, and whole life you will get absorbed in that. But in Bhagavad Gita, there is only one message. Janamarana mokshaya mamashritta yatandiye te brahma tadvidu krishnam adhyatmam karmacha akhilam. Krishna put the very clear words, the foundation for the next chapter. So that is how this 8th chapter is going to start, and we will have it that after 15 minutes or so. No, I'm okay. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Jaramarana Moksha, 7th chapter again, at the end, the last two verses. Jaramarana Mokshaya Mama Ashritya Yatandiye Te Brahma Tad Vidu Krishnam Adhyatmam Karmachakhilam. We have seen that verse, what Krishna is saying there. And in the next verse, you can see Sadi Buddhadi Devam Mam Sadi Yatyanjaye Vidu Prayana Kale Bichamam Te Viduru Yukta Chetasa. One who knows me as Adibudam, Adidevam, Adhiyajnam, and he will know me, and he has Prayana Kale Bijamam Te Viduru Yukta Chetasa. That at the time, Prayana Kala means time of death. He will know me properly. That's what he's saying. Or he'll know me. So, the commentary is Sadibudadi Devam, Adibudam cha, Adidevam cha, Adibudadi Devam. Saha Adibudadi Devena Vartade, Idi Sadibudadi Devam cha. Mam ye vidu Sadi Yajnam cha, Saha Adiyajnena Sadi Yajnam cha ye vidu. Prayana Kale Abhicha, Marana Kale Abhichamam te vidu, Yukta Chetasaha, Samahi Chitaha iti. So, in all these three levels, Adibudam, Adidevam, Adhiyajnam, one who knows me, and they will, at the time of death also, with the full mind, they will come back to me, with a full understanding. They will know me at the time of death. When we go through this 8th chapter, as I mentioned before, that so many misconceptions about death will go. When we pick up certain verses in this chapter, that's where it comes. Like we'll see, we understood that somehow at the time of death, if I remember Krishna, I will escape. This is a very known concept. Every devotee knows that, isn't it? They are sincere, they are serious about that to some extent. That's why they are saying that. They accept that the Andagaleja Mameva Smaran Tiktva Kalevaram Yaprayadi Samandhavam Yadi Nastyatra Samshaya. Krishna says that in that verse. But the difficulty is that how does that happen? Isn't it? That question always comes. That means that at the time of death I will just remember Krishna like the way I have seen in the Gokulananda's form or Landanishwara's form. If I just think that form, what I have seen there at the temples, and if I start remembering this and I leave this body, first of all I don't know when I will be leaving my body, number one. While I am leaving this body, I don't know what will be happening to me. Because all different parts of the body will be pulling in different directions, isn't it? Here everything will be like Kulashekara Alvar says here, that Pranaprayana Samaye Kabham Vadam Pittam, all the three things, Kandhava Rodhana Vidhau Smaranam Kutaste, it will come and block here. And doctors and nurses will be busy there at that time, that how to get you through that difficult time somehow. That's what they will try to do. They are not bothered whether you are going to go spiritual world or to Yamaraja's place. They are not concerned about that. So in that situation, you may understand these words. How does it practically happen to us? This question always there. It's easy to say, oh, at the time of death, as though death is something like moving from one room to another room. It's not that simple, is it? The death. At that time, so many things happen. Your very self is going through a lot of experiences at that time, the time of death. So when we read those verses, you also have to bring back this understanding into life that death is not something what we have experienced in this life. It's first time we are going to experience now. And we don't know what that state will be at that time when that happens, isn't it? Andagaleja Mameva Smarante, the verse is simple. Smarante Tva Kalemaram Yaprayadasam Adbhavam Yadinastyatra Samshaya. That's all it says. Krishna says, I can guarantee you that if at the time of death, if you think of me and leave your body, you will come back to me. That's all it means. But when we finish this chapter, you will know what Krishna is saying is something different than what you have understood so far about it. At the moment we have all understood in this way, isn't it? I was also like that before. I used to understand in this way. So somehow at the time of death, if I can remember Krishna and leave the body, everything is fine. But it's not that simple as we think about it, because when you pick one verse from the Bhagavad Gita and start reading it and taking the translation, literally translation of that verse as everything, then this problem happens. The whole 8th chapter is together. All other verses in the 8th chapter has something to contribute to this concept of leaving the body. Yeah, so many verses there, and you will understand that when you completely study this 8th chapter, you will realize that it is not that process what we thought it is, but it's something different than that. We should come to that later. So, we were discussing this before the break, that one who thinks, why this old age is coming, death is coming, disease is coming, and I want to escape from this, what should I do for that? If this question is coming, it will only come to those people who have started thinking. Those who are not thinking, this question will never happen to them. It has happened in history to many people. Buddha got the same thing, isn't it? This is what happened to Buddha. What happened to Buddha? Buddha, same thing happened to him. And who else had happened? Buddha thought about this, and what did happen? Then Buddha's father arranged, Shuddhodana, he arranged everything so that seeing this Buddha's way of thinking, father wasn't very happy about it. He arranged 3 palaces for him to stay. One for the summer, one for the winter, one for the rainy season. Suitable palaces. Got him married so that let him live happily in the family life, thinking all that. But Buddha and kept him away from all the distress of this world, the father. And one day he was traveling in a chariot. He told one of his charioteers to take the chariot and take Buddha in a chariot to see the world. So Buddha was traveling in the world outside. He saw somewhere an old person, very old man, struggling to walk and holding a stick in the hand, and in a great distress he was moving around. Buddha started thinking, will this happen to me? He asked the charioteer. He said, yes, it happens to everybody, he said. So that's opened for Buddha's eyes. Then he took further and he saw somebody lying on the road, very sick, ready to die. So seeing his sickness and suffering like that, Buddha says to him, does this happen to everybody? The charioteer said yes. So like this, Buddha directly saw people dying, people getting sick, and people suffering in this world with various diseases and all that. Buddha started saying that if this all can happen to me, why should I continue with this? And that is why Janma Jana Maranam Na Bhaved, famous verses from Buddha. If you tell me that all these things won't happen, he says to his father, I am happy to take over your position and run the administration of the kingdom. I have no problem, he said. But this is all waiting there for me. If people are not going, and so-called my family members who are around me, they are all going to go one day. So what is the happiness we are talking about? So Buddha's thought power developed in that way, and he asked the same question. That if this is what's on offer, I am not interested, he said. So this is how intelligent people will think. This is intelligence, to think like this. Who else you see like that? Kathopanishad, Nachiketas, the same questions, isn't it? Nachiketas went and Nachiketas asked Yama the same question. All Upanishads have got to only tell us this one thing, what will happen at the time of death, what are you going to do about it. That's all the question is. Nachiketas asked the question, and the same question several great sages have asked the question, and that's why Upanishads came to them. Durvasa Maharshi, Atri, Angiras, Parashurama Maharshi, Jamadagni, and Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, Bhrigu, Vasishta, Vishwamitra, and endless number of sages. Why they are called sages? Because they have asked the same question. What? We don't ask any of those questions, so therefore there is no problem with us. But they have asked only these questions. They never asked about the economic development or the GDP or things like that. They never asked about those questions. We ask about GDP and things like that. So that is the difference. Those who are thoughtful, those who think beyond this body and who understand and accept Shastra properly, they will ask this question in a natural way. That's what has happened to them. So this has happened in the historic times, in the Upanishads times, and it's happening even now also. Because once this inquisitiveness comes, mokshatvam it is called, no matter who it is, know very well how wealthy you are and how famous you are and how great you are, and whatever it may be in this world, suppose you get sick very badly, you get ill, then what will that help you? All your fame and popularity and followers and wealth and all what you have got, what good is it to you? Because that's all related to the body, is it not? So, but you need that fineness inside to think in this way. When we don't have that fineness, when in very gross way we think, we'll think that life is all these things. That name and fame and followers and money and all these kind of things. But when that fineness, that is Brahmanyam. Brahminical quality means this. That to think in that fineness inside, in a finer way, able to see things properly. That is Brahmanyam, Brahminical quality. That's what Krishna is saying here. So all these so-called achievements in this world, it's all waste at the end. That's the first thing. So, so as soon as something happens to your body, in a bodily level something goes wrong, all this happiness what you are getting from the body, from other sources, goes away with that. Suppose you will know this in this world how it happens, isn't it? Suppose we are a very powerful politician, or a famous football player, or a film actor, or a musician or something. As soon as you get sick and you can't perform anymore, nobody is going to look at you. Nobody wants to know about you. They'll go on to another star. They'll catch hold of another star after that. That's the world. It's like that. You can't blame. That's the nature of the world. But those who can see this and see that everything achievements in this world is all at the end a waste of time, and it's not going to fulfill the life, and therefore any happiness that is dependent on anything external will never make us happy. That's the principle. Anything, if your happiness is based on anything that is outside you, inside me, but outside you, outside my body, if it is outside, including this body, if it is based on that, it will not give me perfect happiness, perfection in my life. This is the principle of Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita wants to stress this point. If my happiness or if my life is based on anything outside me, means outside this body, in the world, centered around anything in this world, name, fame, followers and money and all those kind of things, and even if it is based on this body, Krishna is saying that that is not worthwhile pursuing. And that clarity, in that knowledge, realization is necessary to advance in the path of spiritual life. And when that has happened, it has happened to Buddha, it has happened to Nachiketas, it has happened to all the great sages, and it has happened to many great personalities in the recent times also. And it will always happen to somebody. To somebody it will happen. Those who are very thoughtful, it will happen to them also. So, here, important principle. This is where Vedic philosophy differs from all other religions. All other religions is centered around this one principle. That means, in spiritual life, it is subjective. It's not objective. Spiritual life is subjective. It's not objective. The rishis, the sages, they taught us this one important point first thing. That what is important is the experience in a subjective level, and what you realize is and matures in that state, they gave importance to that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Subjective and objective. Objective means that if it is centered around any object in this world, just like name, fame, followers, money, and all of these things are based on the objects in this world, is it not? Body is also another object. It is. Not me. I'm not this body. I am different from everything. And if my spiritual life is centered around any of these objects, it is objective. But if my spiritual life is centered around me, the soul, which is the subject, it is subjective. So rishis are telling us, the sages are telling us, if your life is not subjective, then you are wasting your time. This very fundamental fact, they put it in front of us first. Nasado vidyade bhavo, na bhavo vidyade sada. Ubayovarami drishtvanam stanayor tattva. That verse will come back again and again and again in Bhagavad Gita to remind us that in all other religions in this world, you can see this in in any other religious process if you take, they don't give this importance to subjective. They give it to the objective side of it. If you carefully analyze, you will see. They want to get as many people as possible together, bring them together and worship together. This is how they have developed their spiritual life. Is it not? You can see that, that they likes to increase the number and bring all together and develop in that way. But that will never reach perfection because it's objective. Whereas perfection is only possible if it is subjective. This is the first thing the rishis have taught us. Rishis have told us this one thing: as long as your spiritual life is centered, is objective, it's not going to work. It will only become perfect. Perfection is only possible if it is subjective. So, it is in that way all the Shastram is written. Shastram is prepared in that way. So, they gave importance to this, that somehow you should mature in that way and you should become perfect. They never looked at the world and told us what's happening in the world. It's not importance. From the Vedic point of view, what is happening in the world is not important. You may find this difficult to digest sometimes because we are so used to the world and given importance to the world. Is it not? So, but when you start studying Bhagavad Gita seriously, you will understand how much importance Krishna has given to this world. Krishna is saying here that what is going on in this world, they didn't even look at it. They didn't even want to know about it. So, therefore, if you know, even the great Western Indologists, they call it, isn't it, who study the Vedic philosophy, and the leading one of them was Max Muller. Max Muller was a German philosopher who spent a lot of time in translating a lot of the Upanishads and Vedams into English language. He spent a lot of his time and energy in that way. You know what Max Muller mentions about that? He says like this: the reason why Vedic philosophy is so perfect, he says, it's so perfect because the rishis were very successful in developing this philosophy. Very successful, he says there. Not only one branch of philosophy, he says, not only Vedantam, even the logic side, Tarkam, Ayurvedam, in so many areas also, they succeeded such a perfection in their analysis and understanding. He says like that. The reason for that, he says, in the time of the sages, there was no media, there was no propaganda, there was no editors editing the things, and there was no newspapers, and no television, and any kind of, there was not even any audience they had. When all these things comes in, what happens? All our activity then becomes a show. It will happen, you can't help it. That's why in the modern world, spirituality has become completely a glamour business. Spirituality is not glamour. Spirituality is something, the internal world development, inside development. That's not happening. Everything else is happening in the spiritual life today. You can see that. Max Muller says there, because in the Rishi's time, they didn't have any of these things. Today what we have, television. They didn't have to appear in 10 different channels every day and show to the world how spiritual you are. You didn't have to do that. There was no necessity for that because the world wasn't like this. There was no television, there was no media. There was no internet. And there was none of these rubbish what we have got now. And because of that, what they were doing was very genuine. And because it was so genuine, they were very perfect as well in what they did. Now, whatever you do, no matter who you are, people who are doing, even in the spiritual world, you will notice this, there is always this element of how the public will think about me. What the public will say about. Therefore, we start making compromise to everything, at every step. Is it not? That, public should not go against it. So in order to please the public, I have to change the philosophy a little bit here and there and adjust the things. But they didn't have to do that. The sages never had to do such a thing. They went to the forest and they did everything in the forest, first thing. So they were not show masters. They were not in the show business. They were not expecting anything from this world. It was complete development inside what was happening to them. That is a big difference. Max Muller says this in his right up, he says here, therefore, they never had, and they never wanted anybody to evaluate them. They never wanted anybody to praise them or to criticize them. They were not interested in that. That was not their way of doing things. And such a thought even never occurred in their mind in the time of the sages. That's what you find, that such a thought even, they never occurred into their mind. Therefore, they could completely focus on the thing, concentrate on that, and work and produce something very genuine and very original. You will see that in the Vedic literature. Very genuine and very original. It's not tainted with any of these things. Because you can see this very practical in life also. That as soon as it becomes a glamour business and glamour show, what will happen? Everything will be, it will be tainted with the impact of the media, isn't it? The media, you can see how powerful that is. If we do something spiritual life, we must make sure it all comes in all the newspapers. And Rath Yatra has to come on the telly. We have to make sure. We have to make sure that all the television companies, BBC, ITV, everybody should be there to show what we have done on the Rath Yatra. People should know. That is our mind is become like that now. In other words, what we want is recognition from the world. The rishis never wanted any recognition from this world. They didn't care for this world. Therefore, Max Muller says, Max Muller was a learned person. He's a German philosopher who spent his time in London. If you read Max Muller's life here, how he spent his time, very hard way he lived here. But he was so absorbed in the Upanishads that he says, this knowledge I haven't seen anywhere else. And he could only imagine that this has only happened because of this, that the rishis never looked for any recognition in this world. Therefore, they were original, very original, and whatever they produced were very, very genuine as well. Same thing later on, Schopenhauer, another German philosopher, he says the same thing about Upanishads. Schopenhauer was a famous German philosopher who took Upanishads very seriously. So you can see this, even those people who are thoughtful people, they can see the impact of the modern world in the spiritual life now, what is happening here. So, we are living in a time in this world which is particularly very bad in that sense. Very bad. Because for spiritual life, adhyalpam, glamour is more important now than anything else. Sometimes you feel also when you see all these things, you don't want this spiritual life anymore. But if you see the type of spiritual life what is on offer today in the world, you feel like throwing out this whole spiritual kind of life and doing something different than all these things. When you make sure that somewhere in the world you sit there peacefully, some corner if you can go and sit somewhere and go through the Shastram and get a deeper understanding like the sages have given us. And because we are like this, that is why when we read Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, we find it so difficult. Because our mind has become like this, infected by the world. So the very nature of spiritual life has changed so much. Those who are watching the television, they will know these things. Because there is more spiritual personalities on the television than the film actors now. You can see Asta, so many television channels, continuously bringing one after the other, churning out like everybody is spiritual. They're all talking about spiritual things and spiritual life. But more than film actors and cinema personalities, there is more spiritual personalities, more glamorous now in spiritual life. And nobody is behind in these things. Whether it is Hindu gurus, Christian priests, or Islamic prophets, doesn't matter. They are all competing each other on this. And the number of channels who are propagating religion through television, if you look, you will see there that in every aspect they are there. So many channels exclusively for this God's channel or this channel or that channel, Peace TV, and so many things like that. Everywhere it is the same thing going on. So normally it is like this, that one who has inner realizations, very inner if he has developed inside, he won't be too concerned about the propagation of it to that extent. Because if his attention has gone inwards, antarmukham, antardrishti, if this has that if it happens, if it hasn't happened, it is they who need this necessity for this kind of publicity. One who hasn't got the inside development, because that is the reality. Spiritual life is like that. So, because this spirituality in a person, it is impossible to bring it outside. It is a thing that happens inside a person, and to show it to others is not possible with that. It is not possible with that. So, and if you do like that, bring it outside, you won't be able to stay spiritual very long. That's the difficulty. Spiritual development is such a thing that when it develops inside, it's knowledge, it's realization, isn't it? When knowledge and realization happens, have you seen any time Sudeva Goswami looking for a television channel to talk his Bhagavatam? Or any one of them, the Tatraya Maharshi, Jadabharata, Sudeva Goswami, and so many others in the Bhagavatam you will see. They all had, once the realization has happened, for them this world is no meaning to them anymore. It is only those who have not perfected that way, not reached the perfectional stage, they want the recognition in the world. They want the recognition in the world. So, so when that happens, what will happen is, when they come like that, and when they fall into this world, when they fall in this world, and then they fall down. When they become spiritual like this, in this way, and then they present to the world, they are very spiritual, and then they fall down, then what happens? The whole world will pounce upon them and tell them that, look, you are number one rascal, you are cheating everybody, you are fool, this one, that one. It's not their fault actually. It is and it is not the fault of spiritual life either. This is the nature of the world. That's all, you have to take it like that. It's not their fault because that's what they knew. They didn't know anything else. And spirituality is not fault, because spirituality is not nothing to do with all these things. So you have to blame for what happens. The world is like that, that's all. Therefore, Adhyatmam, spiritual knowledge is not possible to propagate. It's not possible to propagate. One occasion, what happened was, the head of the mutt in Sringeri, Chandrasekhara Bharati, Chandrasekhara Bharati was highly inward looking. So inward looking he was. Did he know what was going on in this world? To such an extent he has withdrawn from the world, and it was recognized and accepted by all the great personalities at that time. Chandrasekhara Bharati is living in that body for the body to drop and go. That was the state in him. He lived in this world. So inward looking, Antardrashti. In the Bhagavatam you will see this word many places, isn't it? Vivikta Drashtehe, it says in the Bhagavatam that Srinarada Maharshi, when he went to Vedavyas says to him that you are a personality who is traveling all around the world, inside, outside, you know everything what is going on. Is it not? He says to him. So Srinarada Maharshi is very inward looking nature. He knows that things. Vedavyas is like that. All the great sages are like that. So, Brahmarshi is like that. So, Chandrasekhara Bharati's case, he was very much like that. At a very early age, his life is very interesting to read. If you read, you will see that. Very early age, this intense desire for, like we mentioned before, that seriousness in spiritual life developed, and so absorbed in the Shastram everything, and realizations came to him in such a deeper level that the world outside did not matter to him anymore. Because he was so advanced spiritually, the king of Mysore installed him as the head of the mutt of Sringeri. Sringeri mutt is known for its knowledge, very well known for its knowledge. All the great personalities in that Sringeri Parambara is highly learned. But this particular sannyasi, Chandrasekhara Bharati, was well known for at that time. When he was installed there, he told the king that I will not be interested in your mutt affairs. It's not, you can put me there if you want, but I'm not interested, he said. But then they wanted somebody like that, a spiritual personality, as the head of the mutt. So the king insisted that you stay as the head of the mutt, we will have somebody else to do the day-to-day administration, because after self-realization, to do all this vyavaharam is difficult, because day-to-day running the mutt means what? You have to make sure that all the buildings are in good shape, all the people who are living in the mud are making spiritual progress. You have to pay all the bills, electricity, water, whatever that is involved. Just like the mundane administration of this. For him, it was not of any significance anymore. So, Chandrasekhara Bharati said that, that I couldn't do such things anymore. So King said, you just stay there, but somebody else will manage the mud. In the arrangement, it went on like this for a few years. After that, Chandrasekhara Bharati left and went away from the mud also. He moved away from there. Was no minister. So once in one occasion, Chandrasekhara Bharati was talking about Vedandam from the Upanishads to a group of people. And he did mention this, of the difficulty of propagating Vedantic knowledge, Upanishads knowledge to others. Because it is not possible to bring spiritual knowledge into a mundane level. That's not possible. If you try to do that, what will happen is, the whole thing will become polluted with this mundaneness in there. Spiritual knowledge requires a certain frame of mind, a certain way of life, a certain discipline in life, and certain habits in a person. And that very genuine and serious approach in Shastram and perfection in life. As Krishna is mentioned there in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Vyavasayalmiya buddhi ekeha kurunandana. He has got one goal and that is fixed on that. He cannot make compromise there. Now, if you start making compromise, what will happen? Whole thing will become very mundane, and that's what has happened now. You can see that in the world, isn't it? So that will happen. And then we will say that, well, we are all in it together. So we cannot be in it together. It's an individual business, spiritual life. You have to look after your spiritual life, I have to look after my spiritual life. That is completely individual thing it is. You cannot be based on a community or a society or an organization. No, it is totally a personal thing. Krishna is talking to me and I have to take these direct instructions to me from Bhagavad Gita. You have to take it in the same way. Not that it is for one organization Krishna has given Bhagavad Gita. No, Krishna has given Bhagavad Gita to each and every individual. Like Arjuna, keeping Arjuna in the front, Krishna spoke, and it is similarly Krishna is talking to us also in the same way. So Chandrasekhara Bharati was talking from Upanishads in one situation with many students. So he mentioned there that if you are not serious about this, just don't waste your time. Go live your life in this world like everybody else is doing. Be satisfied with that, and you can have your social life or community life or whatever life you want, and be satisfied, happy together, have a bit of kirtan and a bit of prasadam and a few football games and matches or all kinds of things. This is all necessary in the community living, isn't it? Community living, you need all these things, football matches and cricket matches and all kinds of things. You do all that. Don't get worried about spiritual life too much. When you are ready, you come, and that time you will see. So somebody asked him this question at that time, that you are also propagating now, talking about this to these students. You know what Chandrasekhara Bharati said? Chandrasekhara Bharati says to him that what I am doing, he said, after studying Upanishads, Brahma Sutram, Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam and many other Vedic literature, I have started seeing something, that this knowledge they have left behind us, the great sages, what they have left behind, I am trying to get a small, very small percentage of that. I am trying to enjoy it myself. I am trying to enjoy it myself, a small percentage of that, what they have left behind. And when somebody comes and asks me something about it, I am willing to share with them. But if by chance you have thought, I am into propagation of all these things, please forgive me, he said. Please, my greatest apologies to you. I had no such intention to propagate these things, because I know it will not work. If I start propagating this, it's not going to work. Because what will happen is, the mundane vasanas inside us, all of us, is so strong, we will bring Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam into it, and we will make a complete mockery of the whole thing. That's what's happening all the time. You can see when people, when they are not ready for spiritual life. All they want is some comfortable, fun and good life in this world, and they feel that I can add a little bit of spirituality into it so that my life is comfortable. That will not work. Krishna is not for that kind of spiritual life. Krishna's Bhagavad Gita will not help you in that way. It will go on like this. That's why, that is what it has come to now. In that level things are happening in this world, you can see that. And therefore it's becoming very difficult to talk about this. So Krishna's point is that it is not for propaganda, or because all these things has to be spoken. Only then you will find it beneficial, this chapter. You'll find this chapter will be beneficial only if you understand it in this particular way. So, Bhagavad Gita, you will sometimes you advertise this in pravachan. In all the flyers you will see at different festivals, Ramanavami, will advertise like this. There will be a lot of flyers distributed. That I will say, oh, Kirtan, Pravachan, Prasadam, all so many things will mention in that flyer, isn't it? Bhagavad Gita is not for Pravachan. It won't work for Pravachan. You can make Pravachan, but nothing will happen. It will go on like this. Therefore, whether you have understood with your brain or not, if you give enough attention to it, Shraddha, if you hear that, so you will notice this one thing. Bhagavad Gita is not talking about a God who is sitting far away somewhere. Who is sitting somewhere far away from us. Or it's not talking about a world whom we have not seen so far. Many other places that is how it's presented, isn't it? That they talk about a God who is sitting somewhere else and judging us from there. Or it talks about a world which we have not seen. They say in different names, isn't it? Heavens, or where you go and enjoy and all kinds of facilities are offered there for your happiness. Things like that. But instead you will understand when you study Bhagavad Gita carefully, you will see Bhagavad Gita is talking about us right now. It's talking about us. Primarily about our own basic problems with this body and us. With this body and us. That is the topic that is discussed in the Bhagavad Gita. You can look at it, Bhagavad Gita, and see for yourself. See how many places Krishna has spoken about a world after death. Or where Krishna is spoken about a God after death whom you will meet. Nowhere. Whole of Bhagavad Gita, if you study, this is the beauty of Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is right here, now, in this world. While we live here, what should happen to us? This is what Bhagavad Gita is focusing about. Bhagavad Gita never tells us about a world after death where you will be, where you will go and what facilities are offered there, what's happiness there. Things are not discussed at all in the Bhagavad Gita. So that is why, and our own basic problems, that is what is discussed in the Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita is telling us, what's our problem here, and if you want you can solve it. That's how Bhagavad Gita puts it to front of us. You can't say solve it. Krishna is saying here, you can actually dissolve it. That's how Krishna puts it to us. You don't say you can solve it, you can dissolve it. There's a difference between the two. Solving and dissolving. Isn't it? In deep sleep, you don't solve it, you dissolve it. Is it not? Indeed. So, say for example, whole daytime you have some heavy distress. Something went wrong in life. And you thought about it and thought about it and thought about it till the night time, till you go to bed. You didn't find any solution to the problems. And in that process, you slept. You fell into deep sleep. And in the deep sleep, actually you are not solving the problem. What has happened there? You are actually dissolving it. You are dissolving it. Actually you are dropping the problem. Is it not? You are actually dropping the problem. Spiritual life also, this is what we do. In spiritual life also, this is what we are doing. Because all the problems of this world, what you have now, brain creates that. Brain and the mind together, they create the problem. What is our basic problem? Basic problem is this. The body itself is the basic problem. That's where all the problem begins with. Isn't it? The body itself is the basic problem. So what are we trying to do? What we are trying to do is there any way we can get out of these problems of the body? That's what everybody is looking for, isn't it? When we get bodily problems, first thing what we do is that, is there anything I can do to solve the problem of the body? So, till about say 25, 30 years old, um, till about 25-30 years old, this spiritual inquiry does not happen very easily to people. Up to about 30 years old. And the reason for that is the same thing. Because the body is in a healthy state. That's why it doesn't happen. Very rarely it happens below 30, 25-30 years old. Generally, most of the people, they start thinking seriously about it only when they know that nothing can be done about it, about this body. And this is the same reason why up to the age of say 25-30, you don't become very serious about the inquiry. If anybody is showing a lot of seriousness before, it's a very, very rare thing that happens before that age. And if it happens, you should consider that it's a good fortune. That person is able to think in a deeper level. But that's very, very rare thing. So, because the body is healthy and you have the strength in the body, therefore energy is there, therefore you will start thinking that it's not necessary. Spiritual life is not necessary. So, just like you are traveling in a boat and trying to cross the sea, and only while half the way through on your journey, you realize that there is a hole in the boat and the water is getting in through the boat. And similarly, in the lifetime, also in our lifetime, which is like a journey in this boat, only halfway we start realizing that the boat is going to capsize or boat is going to give trouble. Boat is not going to stay forever. So only similarly, here and there in the problem starts in the body, and it is at that time we start thinking about it seriously. So that's why now you can see also when you get older, what happens is, you get a stomachache, then you start thinking when to get the appointment with GP, or you'll try with whatever tablets or Gaviscon or something, whatever you know, you can buy it. If nothing is working, also those who have got internet facility, they look at the internet and see what problems can happen to the stomach. And then you may probably start interpreting, is it cancer or is it something more than that? So many things, doubts start coming into the mind. Or you will say like this and fear develops, is it cancer or is it ulcer or something like that. All sorts of thoughts will develop seriously inside. So on the one side we have the physical problems, and on the other side there is fear also inside. What's going to happen now? What's going to happen now? So while talking to others, you have the fear inside, and while staying in this body, this fear that body is going to go. What is going to go? Bhartrihari puts it very nicely. This fear, how does that fear develops in a person? There's a famous verse in the Vairagya Shatakam. He says that Bhoge Roga Bhayam. Bhoge Roga Bhayam. Kule Chudi Bhayam. Vittan Rubalash Bhayam. Bhoge Roga Bhayam means that when you are enjoying something in this world, always the fear, will I get sick? Isn't it? With this body, you can't enjoy anything perpetually. It's not possible. As much as you try to enjoy, there's also the fear inside, will I get sick? Say for example, you had a wonderful feast. If you overeat, you can get sick. Isn't it? So while eating, you know, although you like to eat everything, but still you can't eat because you know you will get sick. Same thing with so many other sense enjoyment. If you enjoy excessively, you will get sick. Bhoge roga bhayam. Then Kule Chudi Bhayam. Then that suppose somebody is coming from a well-to-do family, family is very well reputed, or family is everybody is respectable there. In the society, I'm saying, society respects certain people, or he comes from a rich family, or comes from a higher, what they say, the aristocratic families and things like that. So they have a name behind them, isn't it? Because he comes from that family. For them, what is their fear? Will I lose my good name? Will our family will lose the good name? That's what they say. Kule Chudi Bhayam. The Chudi, fall down. Will we fall? Something will happen in the family. We'll lose our good reputation. Things like that. Then, Kule Chudi Bhayam. And Vittam Nrupala Bhayam. With the money, we always have the fear that you can see that in the people, that fear, isn't it? The people are always fearful that will we lose our money. So what do? They pay the most minimum tax what they have to pay. That's a big issue now discussed. Is it moral or immoral? It's a very interesting question if you think about it. Government brings certain rules and says to us that people should pay according to this rule, you should pay the taxes, right? And some clever people, and there is these people called accountants who give you very good advice about it. It's very interesting. And everybody is asking this question now, isn't it? So what they are saying is that very rich people, famous people, their income is very high. They are paying only 1% tax and 2% tax or whatever that is. Why? They got these advisors called accountants who tells them how to manipulate your accounts in such a way so that you pay the very minimum tax. So they are legally perfect. They have done the right thing. But there is this poor man who is working and he is paying his 30% and 40% tax. So the question is coming, and who doesn't have any accountant to advise him what he is saying? So this is an important discussion going on now about some Prime Minister said something and all. This just Sandarbhiyam. Out of this context I am saying that they are also thinking that if I don't save money by not paying taxes, my position in the society will go. Who will respect me? Then I am not anymore rich. Suppose I am earning 10 million. If 7 million is given in taxes, then what's the point in working like this? He is thinking like that. So he finds some way to avoid the taxes, to minimize it. And the government rules are such that if you act within the rules, and the advice of the tax, what do they call, the accountants, tax advisors, or what do they call it, independent financial advisor and all they call it, isn't it? Yeah, with all their help, you can do all this manipulation and you end up paying 1% or 2% tax compared to the one who has paid 30 and 40% tax, isn't it? So there, that is what this is. Vittam Nrupala Bhayam, that fear of the taxman, that he is going to take away everything from me. So he is living in that constant fear. He is living in the constant fear. Mane Dhainya Bhayam, Bale Ripu Bhayam, Rupe Jaraya Bhayam. These are all different kinds of fears in us. Bhartrhari is saying this. Bhartrhari was a very great personality in Vikramaditya's court. So Bhartrhari says there that Rupe Jaraya Bhayam, that will I stay like young like this forever? Body is changing, hair is going grey, teeth is falling off, and hands are started shaking, and people started recognizing that you are an old man. So you are losing your youth and old age is taking over. That is what is called Rupe Jaraya Bhayam. That my body is changing. I am not fit anymore, nor I don't look any more attractive. People will look at me and start saying that the old problem is coming. So that's the thing. Bale Ripu Bhayam. One who is physically very strong, when they see somebody else who is stronger than them, they feel fearful about them. Or is much more stronger than me. You can see this among the athletes and the sportsmen and football players and all that. They are also each other frightened. When they see a much more skilled football player, a man who doesn't have that skill, he feels frightened about him. So fear is level in all levels. People are experiencing the fear. So then he says here, Shastra Vadi Bhayam and Gune Khala Bhayam, Kaye Kritandam Bhayam, Sarvam Vastu Bhayanvidam Bhuvi Mriram Vairagyam Eva Bhayam. That is Bhartrhari's conclusions on that. Bhartrhari is saying there that Shastra Vadi Bhayam. Suppose you have studied all the Shastram very well, but if you see someone who knows more than you, then you have fear of that person. Shastra Vadi Bhayam. And Gune Khala Bhayam, Kaye Kritanda Bhayam. The fear of the wicked people, or in body on fear of death, all these things, different kinds of fear, he says it exists. And Sarvam Vastu Bhayanvidam. All this is all these things in the Vastu Kritantat Bhayam. That is based on the body, these things will come. Bhartrhari says, it will come. Vairagyameva Abhayam. He says, what will make you fearless is when you are completely in renunciation comes to your person. When he understands all these things, renunciation will come to him and he will be free from that. He says like that. So, here, what we are discussing that body, the basic problem is that the material body itself. The body itself is a problem. Body itself is a problem. So, if people are thinking, is there any way we can get rid of all the problems from this body? That's what we are trying to do, isn't it? So as I mentioned, up to a certain age, 25, 30 years, you don't feel, because body is in a good shape and it is healthy enough. Therefore, spiritual thoughts don't develop at that time. So, therefore, he says here that we take shelter of so many other things because of this fear only. Because of the fear of illness, diseases, we take shelter of so many things like doctors, medicines, everything. And if you are a wealthy person, you will try to take shelter of the wealth. If you have a lot of wealth, you will find shelter of the wealth. So, in the Bhagavatam, how it mentions like that is, if you remember that Hiranyakashipu, the word itself is, Hashipu means bed, Hiranya means gold. Because he had so much gold and so wealthy he was, he made his bed made of gold. And that's how he slept. The name is like that, isn't it? So, when you have all these things, still you can get sick in this world. You have a lot of wealth, but still you can get sick. So, that is one side. Other side, suppose you are very attached to somebody and you live in a life like that with family members and everything, and there is some peace in that environment, you are feeling some happiness. Suddenly, by Krishna's arrangement, one of you is taken away from that and that relationship is broken completely. Again, distress comes at that time, isn't it? So, anything can happen to them, or this kind of distress is saying to everybody. Is saying to everybody. That is what it says here. That whether you are a very rich person or whether you are a very poor person, this kind of distress will be there because these problems are coming from the material nature. Coming from the material nature. When it is like that, when all these problems, there is no solution to that, the point Krishna is making here is that what have we received practically by all this so-called scientific development? What did we gain from that? There is no answer to that because if you look at these things, you can see that all this development is not particularly any great achievement in that sense. If you look at it this way, what does the science does is that science has given us a lot of comforts in this world, in the world outside. You can see that also how the science has changed our life in the last, even if you look at last 10-20 years, the development of this aircraft and mobile phones and internet and all, it's all continuously changing our world. And many things what you experience today is mentioned in the Puranas, isn't it? In a way that people traveling by airplanes, demigods traveling by airplanes, they have also developed in different ways the same powers. Navayogis traveled. They could change the body depending on the planets where they wanted to travel. So a lot of things you can see that what we are here glorifying now in the modern science, these things were possible to achieve through different ways even among the olden times. People have done that. For example, if you look into the third canto of Bhagavatam, you can see there, Kardama Prajapati created one whole planet for Devahuri Devi to have the honeymoon together. They traveled together in that planet and they were going to the heavenly planets and many other places they have visited together for a very long period of time. That was their holiday was like that. That's how they lived, they had their holiday. If you look at the third canto, you will see there. So Maitreya Maharshi says to Vidura that this was the way they spent their time. Kardama Prajapati and Devahuri Devi. It is not some story that they have written there. It was possible for them because when Kardama Prajapati was so advanced in the yoga system that when he saw that Devahudi Devi had a desire to enjoy life, Kardama Prajapati asked Krishna to send an airplane for him, and it was sent for him from the Vaikuntha, specifically for this purpose. And if you read the description of that aeroplane, even today we don't have an aeroplane like that. When you read that description of that aeroplane and the facilities in there, our aeroplane we have got economy, world traveler, business class and first class. This is the best what we have got here. Or even if you take the executive jets, people who are flying around in this, it is not that comfort what you find in the Devahudi Devi's aeroplane. There if you read the walls, how they were arranged, and not only that, that aeroplane will not fall when the fuel runs out. It could stay floating in the water. So these are yogic siddhis they are. They are not given importance in the Vedam so much. It's only telling us in different times in the history, different civilizations had this capacity to develop technology and science in different ways, through yoga process or through the material process, whatever we have now in this world. So what the point here is that all this is fine. Krishna says in different times all these things have happened. So, but just like a dream, that that's the way it is. That when you start comparing this life today, we are thinking now, only now we have all these things in this world, like aeroplanes and the space travel and all. Only today it has happened. No, it has happened in the history many times before also. But in different ways they have developed that capabilities in different ways. But as far as I am concerned now, what has changed in me? This is an interesting question I have to ask. All these developments and technology and advancement and all, it hasn't helped me, the person. I still have to go through birth, death, old age and disease. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed in me as far as I am concerned, isn't it? Maybe I had all these experiences in my mind through traveling here, traveling there. So, just like this, that similar simple experience, that in my sleep I went to America and spent some time, but when I woke up I am still in London. Nothing has changed. It's a similar situation like that. I'm seeing all these things and dreaming about all that, but in reality nothing has changed. That is the Krishna's point. What is, you can't do anything about these things. What? Old age, disease and death. There is no solution to this problem. We have to really understand this, why Krishna spoke about it so strongly in two places in the Bhagavad Gita. Jaramarana mokshaya mamashirte yatandiye te brahma tadvidu krishnam adhyalpam karma chakilam. One. And then janmamrityu jaravyadi dukkha doshanu darshanam. Because keeping all these things in mind, you have to analyze it. That material development, material advancement or scientific development has not solved any of our fundamental problems of life, which is this changing the body, accepting another body, sickness, old age, death. There is a solution to that. There is never a solution to any of these problems. Therefore, Krishna is saying like that all these things what we now see is like a magic. So many things are happening in this world. But what the result is, because we got absorbed in all these things, we forget about ourselves, our own well-being, our own welfare. So, and we are still the same person when we didn't have all these things. Nothing has changed. And there is no solution to my distress. There is no peace inside. There is no fulfillment inside with any of these development inside. So after seeing all these things, thinking about it, analyzing it, one who throws away all these things from inside, Krishna says, he is called Mumukshu. In Upanishads, that is how it is addressed. Pariksha lokan karmachitan nirveda mayal agradakradena tadvijnanartam sagurumeva abhigacchel shamil pani shrotriyam brahmanishtam. It's a famous Upanishad statement. That when one has come to spiritual life, if he is in this state, what this verse is saying, what is that? Pariksha lokan karmachitan. He has experimented with everything in this world. And what has happened to him? Nirvedamayal Agrita Kridena. He has understood this one thing, that Nirveda Vairagyam, renunciation has happened to him. How? Agrita Kridena. Agrita Kridena means that anything I get from my effort in this world will eventually go. It won't stay. All these things, scientific development in this world, is by your effort you can get it. But one day it will leave you and go. It will not stay with you. None of this scientific development will stay with you. It will go, isn't it? Whether it's a mobile phone or television or car or airplane, whatever it is, you have to leave them and they'll go. The Nirvedamaya Agradakadena. Therefore, one who has come to that understanding that none of this is of any use to me at the end, Tadvijnanatam Sagurumeva Abhigachet. Such a person, for the sake of self-realization and knowledge, he should approach a spiritual master, Shamilpani Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam. And that spiritual master should be such, he should be Brahmanishtam. He should have realized the truth. And approach him, Shamilpani. Shamit means kushagrass in the hand, with folded hands like this. Approach him and take his shelter, and he should be a Shrotriyam. Shrotriyam means one who has realized that truth himself. Only then it will have its effect. Shamilpani Shotriyam Brahmanishtam. Tadvijnanatam Sadgurumeva Abhigachet Shamilpani Shotriyam Brahmanishtam. This is the Upanishad's statements about that. So whatever you have achieved through these scientific efforts or discovery or invention, it's all at the end is of no use. Is it not? As far as your personal level, your problems are concerned, nothing has been solved. You are still getting sick, you are still becoming old, you are still dying, and you still have to accept another body. That hasn't been sorted yet. Those issues have not been sorted yet. So, those things are there, and you have to analyze that and think about that, and you can even use them in your life, but at the same time, you have to keep on asking this question inside, has this really helped me in my life? Has this really helped me in my life? So, because perfection of life, as Krishna is concerned, that inner fulfillment, shanti, anandam or happiness, what one has to experience from the soul, and not accepting another material body again, and finishing up this business here with this body is the perfection as far as Krishna is concerned. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita is addressed to those people who are looking for that. Not for those who wants to live a comfortable life in this world and make their life happy in this world. For them it won't help. Bhagavad Gita is no use to them. So keeping that in our background, we'll discuss it next Saturday. We'll start with this 8th chapter then. Or glory to Srila Prabhupada.